Welcome to the Story and Critique Show, episode 26 and 227 days of consecutive writing live streams. I am Kauffman, and this is our weekly show where we read story critiques and where I read stories and then provide critiques for writers in the community. So if you're wanting feedback on your story, make sure to send an excerpt to the below email, kaufman@the-creative-ghost.com. I accept all genres and all story types. I really treat it as an alpha beta reading excerpt. So if you're needing help with your story, whether you're at the beginning of your rough draft or you're a couple drafts in, I got you covered. And by the way, I'm Kauffman, and I'm on a mission to show writers everywhere that the entire writing process, brainstorming, writing, and editing, can be both fun and easy with the right framework. So come join the WriteNow community today. And by the way, if you're watching this on the replay, I got you covered. After the stream ends, time codes will be added to each part of the stream, so that way you can hop to the part of the video that brings you the most value. Whether you submitted a story and you just want to get the feedback again, or there's a story that you loved listening and you're like, you know what, I just have to keep hearing that story. Perfect. And what we're going to do is we're going to hop into our submission guidelines. Now, before we do that, let me just hop into the chat. Courtney, welcome. It's good to have you in here, my friend. Thank you. I saw your submission as well. And the Mass Toaster in the house. Welcome, welcome. Doreen, welcome to the stream. Good to have you in here. Soul, my fellow gaming streamer. And for those of you who don't know, Soul's going to be joining me at the end of the month, and we're going to be doing a special gaming live stream specifically for any writer who wants to work on developing a script or a gaming script for streaming. So we're going to be doing a little fun let's play. More details to come soon. Beautiful. And LMae, my friend, welcome. I saw your submission. Hopefully looking forward to reading it today. Excellent, excellent. And happy to have all you guys in here. My bad. Welcome back, my friend. Welcome back to the stream. It was really cool chatting with you about your writing, your magic system, and that you're like chaotic god world yesterday. I hope the development process is coming out well for you, my friend. Welcome to our stream. And John, welcome, my friend. I know life's been busy. I hope we get to read some more of your comedic stories in the future, my friend. John is a very, very clever and comedic writer. Submitted it a long while back. And Mary, woo, you made it. What's up, Mary in the house? Welcome, welcome. All right, my friends. And we have, let's see, John, you're like, where is he? There's only the thumbnail screen. John, maybe try restarting it. Yeah, I'd say, John, try refreshing it. Sometimes that happens. If you hit it, if you start the stream after it's already started, sometimes it doesn't refresh. All right, beautiful. And we're going to be hopping straight into it. So I have my screen all set up. We're actually going to be starting at the top of the show with Penelope's. We're going to be starting with Datura's Requiem. So Penelope, if you're here in the stream, just say aye. Give a holler. And before we hop into there, we're going to be going over the submission guidelines. So for those of you who don't know, I'm going to be mixing it up a little bit based off the previous formatting that I've been doing for the past 25 episodes. Now, previously, I've set every single one on a timer. I'm going to be getting rid of the timer today. I'm trying it out because I've realized that some stories need that exact amount of time, other stories don't. And then I end up feeling pressured and not being able to give the full amount of value that I really want to give. So I'm going to be getting rid of the timer and allowing myself to really focus on the critiques for each of these stories without feeling rushed, because every story has a different level of critique that it needs. Some stories are in a much better place than others. So if you're wanting feedback on your story, once again, the details are down in the ticker below. Also, if you're here on YouTube, it's down in the YouTube description. So make sure to send that excerpt along if you're needing help with your story, and give me a shout out in the comments so I can check my email. Perfect. And if I'm going through your story and I'm highlighting the heck out of it, it's neither a good or a bad thing. Highlighting is simply a way for me to remember the things that I want to speak to when I get to the critique portion of it. Beautiful. And then how do I critique? So I am of the belief that there are 6, that's right, 6 elements of the creative writing. That is world building, character development, plot, dialogue, and structure, and technically grammar, but grammar is not a focus on these streams. So those are the 5 elements that I like to focus on. Now, as you can see from my guidelines here, I've listed them all out here for your benefit. Now, if there's something that you really like about the story, maybe it's like a piece of dialogue, or maybe it's an action or a character. If you love it, drop a comment, because I guarantee you, whether the author is here in the stream or they're watching on the replay, they will look at every single comment. If there's something that you feel like could be improved, specifically quote, be like, hey, this could be improved because of this. If we're submitting our stories for feedback, we always have to keep in mind that our goal is to help you create the best possible manuscript possible. Best possible manuscript ever. So if you're giving feedback, my belief is all feedback is great feedback, as long as it's delivered in a way that is kind. All right, beautiful. So definitely join the conversation. Perfect. And I have Datura's Requiem all queued up. I'm going to try not to kill my voice today so we can get through as many stories as possible. We have a high number of submissions this week. Perfect, perfect. And wonderful. All right. And I think I got everything all set up. Hey, what's up, Penelope? Glad to have you in here. Well, thank you for all the welcomes, my friend. It doesn't feel like a real welcoming experience unless I get all 4 of those. And by the way, friends, something else that I've also mixed up, since I'm going to be trying out new creative or new types of writing streams on the weekend periodically, because I want to be able to mix up the critique show and the offerings. Those of you know that last Saturday we did the pitch and blurb fest, and that was like super successful. I had a great time with it. However, due to the high number of submissions, I may or may not be able to get to yours. So I'm going to do my best to get to all story submissions that I'm able to. This is what I recommend. If you need feedback immediately, right, and you're like, you want to guarantee your spot, I recommend the tipping feature. So down in the YouTube description, I offer tipping through the Buy Me a Coffee platform. Still 100 subscribers away from the in-app YouTube tipping, but we'll get there, my friends. We'll get there, because this weekend also marks the celebration of. I probably should have pulled up my YouTube channel for this. This marks the celebration of. Look at this number right here. I've been so excited. What is this? How many subscribers is that? 405. We broke the 400 subscriber milestone. So thank you. 400 subs. That's such an accomplishment. Now, onwards and upwards to 500 is the first major milestone. We shall get there. So I just wanted to make sure and say thank you, because that's so incredible. And I would not be able to do what I'm doing without all of you. So thank you so much. It's the coolest thing ever. I didn't even think that I would cross like 100 or 200 subs. So anything beyond 100 for me feels like an accomplishment. All right, perfect. So Penelope, I have your story all set up. Excellent. I'm going to throw this down in the ticker down below, and we are good to get started. What's up, Neil, by the way? Welcome, my friend. I believe in you, Neil. I think you'll be able to do it one day. I think there's always so much hesitation around submitting a story excerpt, because we don't know how people are going to respond to it. But the great thing, and this is the thing to keep in mind when submitting, Well, we're all in different journeys of our writing. We are all in different parts of the writing journey. We're all coming to it from the same mindset, right? We all want our stories to be improved. We all want to get to that published novel. So going into it with the mindset of like, hey, we're all in the same boat here will make the submission process so much easier. And if anything, after 25 episodes of doing this, I have never seen a bad comment in regards to one of the stories. So this is such a great supportive community, and everyone understands that we just want to improve each other's stories. Okay, perfect. So let's get into it. I want to just make sure I answer any of your questions. Mass Toaster, this story is a brand new one. We have not touched on Datura's Requiem before, so this is a brand new story. Great question. I know. We did one of Courtney's story excerpts a couple weeks back. It was a pretty cool story excerpt. It was fun with the characters. It's a little brief, but we did get to do a little fun deep dive. My bad. Does it have to be the actual manuscript, or can it be a specific part of it, like character development, world building, etc.? You know, that's a great question. I think right now the critique show works best if it's an excerpt of a manuscript. But if it for ideas like that, I'm actually going to be trying out a new format soon that instead focuses on story development. So stay tuned if that's something that you're interested in, for writers who might need help with like the back end of like, need to flesh out this character, need to flesh out this world. I'm going to be trying out a new stream coming soon. But this show specifically works best for manuscript excerpts. Great question. Absolutely. Last time I tipped someone, they fell down and started to yell at me. Mass Toaster, I'm so sorry to hear that. Well, I promise you, I will not yell at you. And hopefully I won't fall down either. Kauffman, are you going to do another blurb show sometime? I've been working hard on mine. Yes, I will. I will do another blurb and pitch fest because it was a very successful stream. I haven't determined when yet, but I will be doing another one. It's going to be part of a series of new weekend writing streams as I try to branch out and help writers, help each of you with different parts of the writing process. Absolutely. I'll keep you guys updated when I do another blurb and pitch fest. Penelope, I'll tip Toaster if he falls down. Okay, perfect. All right, let's get into it. And Datura's Requiem. And just let me know, my friends, if you can't hear me with the background music. Sebastian, 1990. I glanced to my right. The towering pines and quivering aspens were a blur, a furious patchwork of green and brown. Somewhere beyond the mess, mountains rose to meet the sky. Was I racing to meet heaven too? Was she? Gripping the wheel, I screeched round a corner. The road narrowed, with a sheer rock on one side and a flimsy steel barrier between me and a 40-foot drop. Death loomed everywhere. I knew I should slow down. Instead, I slammed down the accelerator. Ophelia, oubliette. She forgets. The pages were long, taped together. The words, a whimsical cacophony, their meaning displaced by the silence of fear. But I hear the universe is taking rewrites. Sebastian, 1978. The first time I saw Ophelia, she was 9 years old. I was in makeup and costume, idly waiting for the production staff and cast to recover from their hangovers so we could start filming. Ugh. I was grumpy, for reasons that are Capricorn and various, and I was bored. I reclined in my chair, eyes rolling skyward, voguing at God, if she cared to glance in my direction. The script lay limp in my lap. Something caught my eye. A little girl pointing and laughing at me by the cactus on the set. I squinted at her. She had ruddy cheeks, dark eyes, and straight-cut bangs, like one might take a dull pair of scissors and hack the viewing portal for a sheepdog. She waved, and then she was laughing. This tender idiot with the horrible fringe. Laughing? At me? Why? As I said, Capricorn. She seemed inexplicably happy to see me. I rolled my head back, shut my eyes, and shouted into the void. Cameron, what on earth is this child doing here? When I looked back, the girl had vanished. Intrigued, I rose, script abandoned, and I walked to where I'd seen her. In the sand, not a step in nor out, but two petite imprints of a child's shoes remained. Yes, Mr. Sinclair? Came a soft voice from behind me. Jane. I whirled around and smiled. Please, Sebastian is fine, I told Cameron's assistant again. Yes, Mr. Sebastian? Sigh. Where is Cameron? I asked. She fiddled nervously with the clipboard and didn't look at me. Mr. Cameron is... Fuck. We were going to lose another day of filming to Cameron's drunken debauchery. Has he made it to the studio this morning? I asked. She cleared her throat. I'm sure Mr. Cameron will be here. Never mind, I said with a dismissive wave of my hand. When you need me, I'll be in my trailer, running lines. Oh, I said, removing the red paisley kerchief knotted at my neck. On second thought, ask Margaret to come to my trailer for me, please. Cameron's assistant glanced at the call sheet. I don't see that. You and Miss Margaret are filming any scenes together today. Hard to film much when your director is still sleeping beneath the cardboard box outside a roller skating rink in West Hollywood. The stage lights were seething. I smiled and unsnapped the top two buttons of my black Western shirt, revealing the blonde hairs on my chest. Jane glanced at my bare skin, unable to hide her interest. If I wanted, I could have shifted slightly to call her attention to how tightly my trousers fit. Instead, I licked my lips, tasting sweat. All the same, Jane, I dipped my black cowboy hat in her direction and moseyed to my trailer. Of course, Mr. Sebastian. I'll let Miss Margaret know. You expect her. I waved the red paisley scarf in parting. Thank you, I said without turning around. I was 22, and yes, I'm aware that I may have been behaving like an adult with a hard prick and a soft head. If you can afford it, be kind. Ugh, I was reeling. I just won an Oscar for what the Los Angeles Herald called the most riveting performance of the last 5 years. My nomination was a fluke, and nobody, least of all me, thought I was in the running to win. I was just a quiet kid with too many planets floating in Capricorn. Just a guy from South San Francisco who took a few acting classes and had done nothing noteworthy except for my breakout role as the Tin Man in our high school production of The Wizard of Oz. Hell, I wasn't even acting. It was 1978, the summer after I graduated. I was hanging out in front of the Red Vic in cut-off denim shorts that barely covered my balls, watching the prostitutes haggle with the Johns while the junkies bothered me for change. I'd bought a book earlier that day, poetry or something. I'd stashed it in my back pocket. The fog burned off hours ago. Ugh, it was hot. I didn't want to go home. All that awaited me was my drunk dad hitting my mom. He'd already beaten me that week. The bruises beneath my shirt had turned dull yellow and gray, and I didn't know what I could do for mom except bury him before he buried her. I still don't know how to bury someone. I still don't know how to save them. When the prostitutes drove off with the Johns and the junkies got high and passed out, I pulled the book out of my back pocket. According to the lore, a story Cameron recalled and embellished upon infinite times. According to the lore, a story Cameron recalled and embellished upon infinite times in the wake of parties and a wash of alcohol after my fluke Oscar win. According to him, I was browsing through it with some of radiant and pensive look on my face when Cameron St. Clair came stumbling by with his entourage. He wasn't much older than me, but his father was a well-known director, and he had inherited both Pop's money and talent. His drinking problem was his mother's legacy. You, he shouted, pointing at me. I looked up at him with a searing glare from under my shaggy blonde locks, hoping he would fuck off. But I only endeared myself to him more. Perfect! You are my Hamlet. That's how I won an Oscar. With a searing glare at the dirty lawman as trap door opened, and I wriggled, hung, and faked my death to the cheering applause of hundreds of thousands. That's how I got roped in another Western directed by Cameron St. fucking Clair. But none of that explains Ophelia. And end reading. Wonderful, wonderful, awesome. So first off, Penelope, thank you, thank you. Woo! Okay. So I have to say, one of the things that I really liked about that story was the character development. I think the thing that was really clear was how much of a pretentious Hollywood asshole our main character is. And I think getting into his mindset is a lot of fun. There's a reason on with a lot of television shows that viewers love to gravitate towards that asshole stereotype because they act like a child. Their actions are both entertaining, it's the dramatic and the comedic, while they have some type of big character arc, some type of big underdog type story that makes them act the way they do. I think one of my favorite asshole characters of all time was probably a little older, from the medical procedural show Dr. House. House was probably one of my favorite examples of how do you create and develop an asshole character that still makes the audience care about them in the long term. So that was just one of the character types it reminded me of. But overall, I absolutely loved the asshole character. I think it was very fun. And then you started it off with the little like ghost girl. I was in makeup. I was grumpy. Yeah. So you started off with this almost supernatural feel. It's kind of interesting because if I had taken out this first part with the ghost portion, where was it? In a soft voice. Yeah. So if you had taken out this part with the ghost, the first 2 pages, I wouldn't have been able to have guessed that this was a ghost story at all, which was really interesting. So that tells me that the story itself takes place in obviously the present moment of this Hollywood actor. And there's going to be these moments that pop up that probably become more and more supernatural. What did, if you were here in the stream, what did you think of it? Did you enjoy that kind of that supernatural vibe? Let's see. Jared is an NPC. I'm looking at you guys' comments now. Jared is not an NPC toaster. Oh, I got that. Thanks, John. Oh, perfect. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I can tell, Penelope, that a lot of people are agreeing. It was good. The characters did really stand out. Absolutely. Yep. So that's definitely the character type that I got. It's definitely that character type. So let's dig into the minutia of it. Let's dig into it. So, it's interesting starting off. It's almost like we're starting off with 2 poems. That's essentially what I'm getting. And it's a short story that starts off with poetry. That's essentially what we're getting right now. And I think it's intriguing. You could almost challenge that if this was a short story, if this was a longer story. This is almost like a prologue. I think this is the closest thing we kind of get to what would be a prologue for a short story. I actually kind of like it. The road narrow, death limbed over. I knew I should, instead I slammed down the accelerator. What's interesting, Penelope, so I think something that I would change, that she taped together just the words. So I think something that I would change is that Sebastian kind of feels like almost a prologue chapter, but then the Ophelia chapter feels a little bit more like it's a poem. And it's because of your unique word choice. So what happens is it kind of gives this different vibe. So it gives this, okay, I'm kind of getting a prologue chapter. and then I get a poem, and then I get the main story. What I would recommend is I would actually recommend start off with Ophelia. Clearly, while Sebastian is our protagonist, we can tell that the story, the overarching plot is about Ophelia, the character Ophelia. And that's we can tell that based off how she is a key moment. She is probably the inciting incident, is my guess, but she is a key moment in the very opening of this story. So I would actually start this off with Ophelia at the very beginning, simply because your use of poetry is very engaging. You want to pull readers in with this kind of like unique poetry sense, which I thought was actually really fun. So I'd recommend start off with Ophelia. And then Sebastian, I glanced to my right, the towering pines. So I'm gonna be on the mast, mountains rose to meet the sky. Was she gripping the wheel? I scooted around the corner. So essentially, we're starting, and so technically the present moment is in 1990, and then 1970. Okay, so the present moment is in 1990. Now this type of thing, it can work. It absolutely can. But I think based off, because you're starting off 1978 with this kind of supernatural event, I actually think that this story is stronger starting off with Sebastian 1978. And if you had started off without him seeing Ophelia, that would have been a little different. But because 1978 starts off with him seeing Ophelia, and because you have the poetry here, I think the short story will just be much stronger. Start with the poem. We're like, okay, something interesting with Ophelia. I would even recommend maybe add on to this a little bit, because the poetry, your word choice is interesting. The words a whimsical cacophony, their meaning displaced by the silence of fear. That's like that's very interesting. Very, very interesting. So I think it would be so much more powerful, maybe even adding on to this just a little bit. Start off with this, use Ophelia as the hook, and then go straight into the Sebastian the 1978. That would be my recommendation, because I think that would just be stronger since it's about Ophelia. And I think what happens here is when we do these cutback, these flashback scenes, which are very popular in movies, where the present moment is actually the climax, and then the story is a retelling of them getting to the climax. I think based off this, because you're kind of using a bit of a car crash, I just think this isn't as strong as the poetry moment, and then him seeing this 9-year-old girl. And I think because this is done a lot, the poetry and this seeing Ophelia is more unique. That would be my recommendation. But if you want to stick with keeping this as the setup, I would move the Ophelia poem to a little later on in the story during the next scene break. So because these are both big moments, and I would want to give each of these moments a more profound impact to the reading experience. All right, perfect. I liked it. One I don't like is calling the ghost girl an idiot, and that's probably just me. That's a good call out, Doreen, calling the ghost girl an idiot. It's interesting because it actually does speak to Sebastian's character, because he comes across as this asshole, but it does minimize the supernatural creepiness of Ophelia. I think so. Okay, so let's get into this portion right here, because that's interesting. I was grumpy for reasons that are Capricorn. By the way, what you do with Capricorns, his thing as a Capricorn is very clever. It's very funny. I would recommend, Penelope, I would recommend anybody who's really into astrology is relatively familiar of what each of the astrology signs means. For anybody who isn't into astrology, they're going to have heard of the astrology names, but they're not going to know what each of them means. For that reason, I would give a little context on what is a Capricorn, or what maybe just some like key traits that signify what a Capricorn is. I was grumpy for reasons that are Capricorn and various. Capricorns this, Capricorns that, or do some type of storytelling way to fill the reader in. So like, okay, yeah, that's what a Capricorn is. As a real quick, I wouldn't even make it super long, but I think that'd be a great way of bringing the reader along who doesn't know what specifically makes a Capricorn stand out from the other astrology signs. I was bored. Let's say voguing at God. This was interesting. I was actually curious to see if that was a good use of that word, voguing. Is a highly stylized. So vogue or voguing is a highly stylized modern house dance. Voguing at God. Yeah, I based off just this is my initial Google search. I'm not sure if voguing works as a word, but it's very interesting. It's very, very interesting. So I would recommend just researching and making sure that the word works. The script lay limp, something caught my eye. A little girl pointing, laughing at me. Squinted at her. She had ruddy cheeks, dark eyes, and straight cut bangs. Like one might make a dull pair of scissors and a hack of a viewing portal for a sheepdog. Once again, your details and description, Penelope, are really awesome. She waved and then she was laughing. This tender idiot with the horrible fringe. Okay. So when we get to this, so she waved and then she was laughing. This tender idiot with the horrible fringe. I think the challenge, Penelope, with calling somebody an idiot is it makes sense for his personality, but the challenge to that is that she's 9 years old. Let's see. Sebastian is versus with story begins in the late 70s. Yeah, so in my reading of it, I got the sense that Ophelia is more of like an apparition. I didn't get the romantic sense. I got a little bit more the supernatural sense. But I think if there's that confusion there, I think what I would recommend, because I think by use of idiot makes it almost seem like that's something that you would call another adult type character. My recommendation is she waved and then she was laughed. I would recommend that the way that he perceives this moment, use some language that makes it feel that pushes it a little bit more in the supernatural direction. And I think that would clarify that for any potential readers that this feels like more of a supernatural experience for him. Whether or not he likes the experience or he doesn't, I think using some supernatural terminology here could help with that. And this works why the laughing, right? So this shows his ego. This is good. I would just say terminology for the reader's benefit. Let's see. She seemed inexplicably happy to see me. I rolled my head back. Interesting. So she only shows up in poetry. That's an insight. She only shows up in the story through her poetry. That's actually very interesting then. That's very interesting. Then I could see you using your use of poetry throughout the story at different dramatic beats of showing her character. I actually like that. That's cool. Okay, so intrigued, I rose, script abandoned, and then we're into the present moment of 1978. He was basically a Hollywood schmuck who has a very high ego of himself. I think all of this stuff works. Yes, Mr. Sebastian. I would and smile. Please, Sebastian is fine. I told Cameron's assistant. I would give a little description, or I would do just a brief setup for some of these other characters here. You have so you have the assistant, and although I think it's really just assistant, but I'm pretty sure they came a soft voice behind me, Jane. I told Cameron's assistant. Yep. So it's just Jane, Cameron's assistant. Yep. Yeah. So what I would do is I would just do a little bit of setup. After this introduction here, like this is good. This is clever because you're like, okay, clearly like he can recognize her by her voice, which is awesome. So I wrote around and smiled, please, Sebastian is fine, which Cameron's assistant. And then after this, I think this is a good opportunity to give a brief little description on who is Cameron's assistant or what about Jane, even if it's just in a single sentence of like, oh, she follows Cameron around everywhere or whatever you want to go about it. I think a little description would help set her up. She fiddled nervously with the clipboard. Her actions are good. You do a good job of referencing Cameron. So clearly Cameron's another drunken Hollywood schmuck. Made it to the studio. This is good. Let's say I said with just when you need me, I'll be in my trailer running lines. Oh, I said, removing the red paisley kerchief, nodded at my neck. On second thought, asked Margaret to come to my trailer for me. Okay, so I think what my problem with this was that it's just structuring. I think this should just be a new. Never mind. Let's see. Never mind. I said with a dismissive wave of my hand, when you need me, I'll be in my trailer running lines. Yeah, because this is a new thought. Just make this a new paragraph. So that way the ideas don't blend together. Even though it's the same speaker, it's kind of two different like ideas. Yeah, I would do that. Cameron's assistant glance. I don't see that. This is good. Hard to film much when you're director. Perfect. The stage light's receding. Interesting. So because okay, so he has the black cowboy hat. That's interesting. I would almost recommend give me a little reference the cowboy hat in the beginning because I'm like, okay, wait. So is he filming a western right now? I was in makeup and costume, idly waiting for the staff. Yeah, so I might just reference real quick what type of production he's doing because I would not have pictured a cowboy hat until you reference it. So I'm like, okay, so he's filming a cowboy hat, but then I know you later reference Hamlet as well. So then I was like, okay, is he doing? I think he did Hamlet, but now he's filming a western. So that'd just be for a point of clarity. But that's cool. I think the cowboy hat fits that stereotype very well, in all honesty. Okay. So then we start getting the way that he views himself. And so this is a good example of character development, my friends. When we think about characters, three things we want to keep in mind. And this is just pro writing tip here. Character development, three things to keep in mind, three psychology tricks. What are the character's actions? So what do the character's actions say about them? What does the character think about themselves? How do they perceive themselves? How do other people perceive the character? Three great strategies when you're thinking about developing a fully fleshed character. Character's actions, how do they think about themselves? How do others think about the character? Pro little writing tip if you're working on character development. Okay, so let's see, and this is a good way. So this is the way that he perceives himself, which is great. If you can afford it, be kind. And then we go into his backstory, right? He's basically a Hollywood actor. We get back to the Capricorn, which is great. This tells me this is going to be a thing throughout the story, which is funny and clever. I like them. And then we get into his background. This good. He's basically a theater kid, bit of a theater kid growing up. Not except for my break. Yep. Summer. And then so 1978, we're setting up the world a little bit, which is fine. I bought a book earlier that day. The fog burned off hours ago. That's right, because it's San Francisco, right? And San Francisco is known for its fog. Penelope, for anybody who doesn't live in San Francisco, they probably don't know that the fog is the resident. For anybody who's not aware of San Francisco, fog is literally the main resident of San Francisco. The fog literally has a name. I forgot what the fog's name was, but fog is like the permanent fixture of San Francisco. I might just reference the fog because that's actually a fun thing, a fun side note about the San Francisco area. The fog, or even setting up that it's just really foggy. Okay, I don't want to go home, although waited me with my drunk dad. Yep. I didn't know what I could do except bury him before he buried her. So this is interesting. I didn't know what I could do for mom except bury him before he buried her. So this makes me think, so did he kill the dad? It's now we're at a point in the story where you don't actually have to answer this yet, but this is on my mind. So if this is going to be a plot point and he did kill her, and this is something you're going to reveal later, great job of foreshadowing. If this is just a side reference to a backstory, clarify what that means if the reader needs to know this right now and this isn't foreshadowing. My gut is this is a little bit more character development and backstory, so that's what comes to mind. But I think the burying, my guess is it's important because the burying someone is important to how he deals with Ophelia later on. That'd be my guess. This is good. So this really talks about him and Cameron St. Clair. You know what I would do with the way that you're setting this up, because you've set up the year so much, and because right now the present moment is 1978, I would actually stop at the end of this his backstory scene. What's that, around here when the prostitutes? I would stop here and then make this a new chapter. That's what I would do, simply because now we're exploring Cameron. Now, depending on how much depth you go into, I would do the same scene setup. So that's what, page 12. I would do the same setup here because that's how you've established it. And what's that in 13? Where are we at? Yeah, so I would do the same setup here. I would, of course, new page. And I would do that as Cameron. Or what do you call him? You reference like Cameron the asshole or something like that. Cameron the drunk, the debauchery drunk. I forgot what was the name that you called him. Cameron. I would reference Cameron Saint fucking Claire. Although that would be not quotes. Or you could do or the drunk debauchery. Debaucher. I think that's what they refer him earlier. Yeah, whatever the name is that they refer to him. But that's how I'd say I do it like this, and then whatever the year is, do that as a quick backstory for Cameron, and then return to the main story. Because this is mostly about Cameron. Well, it's technically about his right claim to fame, but I think by switching it up with this other, like, we kind of want to, like, Cameron's an asshole, especially if he's going to become if he's more of a major supporting character later in the story. That would be my recommend. The drunk debauched director. Perfect. The drunk debauched director. Yeah, that's how I would go about it. So one of those two titles. And beautiful. Other than that, but explains Ophelia. There's our perfect lead-in, which makes me think this is, because this is a short story, this is probably the end of the first act, so to speak, and the transition in the second act. So wonderful. Great opening. I am very, very intrigued, my friend. Looking forward to reading the rest of it. Absolutely enjoyed that. That was a fun reading. Thanks for submitting that, Penelope. And I can tell a lot of the writers here in the community were enjoying it as well. Let's see. And we definitely got some really great ideas here. I love that idea. A poetry-only character, very intriguing. Shawnee made a great recommendation. I think imp or oaf would work better than idiot. Agreed. And it's specifically because they are 9 years old. That it's for that reason alone, because they are a child. And people's perceptions, you have to keep in mind, Penelope, that when people, the two no-nos of society is you cannot be mean to a child of like a pre-teen child, and you cannot be mean to a pet or an animal if they are an innocent puppy or a cat. The one thing that people hate is they hate the death of animals, and they hate us being mean to children because children represent innocence. So that, for that reason specifically. Yeah, I would agree. Jane is probably like Cameron's like everything, like personal assistant for everything. Yeah, and I think for that reason, I think by clarifying the titling and the sections, and I think also getting rid of that early the car scene in the draft, I think that'll actually fix those problems a lot more. So then it'll let you focus on Hollywood asshole. Oh, he's having this supernatural vision of Ophelia. I think that'd be interesting. Hey, what's up, ML? Welcome to the stream, my friend. We just wrapped up Penelope's story. Penelope, that means you have lots of good material to work with. Absolutely. And then regardless, Penelope, your level of detail with your writing is phenomenal. You're always doing really, really good with your character descriptions and your world building. Yeah, this is exactly what Mass Toaster. Penelope, love your character development. A lot of writers struggle to make their character stand out in the first chapter. Completely agreed. LMae, you have some good recommendations. Brat, Rugrat, Anklebiter, or Cherub. I think because it's a little bit more of a supernatural vision, I would go for something that's less direct. I would do something that's a cross between you want an indirect word with a supernatural word. So you want something that feels both indirect and supernatural. That would be my recommendation. Top of mind, nothing comes to mind. It'll probably come to mind in like 2 hours. But Penelope, I'll let you know whenever I read through it, I'll let you know how I feel about it. Beautiful. And by the way, so I want before we hop into the next story, and let's see, who do I have on deck? I can call out who do I have on deck. LMae, I'm actually going to have yours on deck, which is a fantasy murder mystery. But before we get to LMae's, Penelope, I want to do a really quick shout out. So we want to help out Penelope right now. Penelope submitted her story of Jezebel's Theater of Macabre Delights to Amazon Velas. It's the Amazon Vellies. So it's a competition. It's a short story. It's an episodic short story competition. So please go support her. All you have to do is go to this page. I will drop the description in the comments. Beautiful. So all you have to go do is go to the page and just click the follow button. So follow her because the judging guidelines, they take into consideration the amount of attention that writers get, that the submissions receive based on how many people are following them and the number of likes. So of course, like definitely read the stories because the episodes, it's actually really, really good. We've done the first 2 episodes on previous streams about a month ago before they were submitted, and they were actually really, really interesting. If you're wanting something that's like supernatural, that's kind of like paranormal, supernatural, kind of gives you a vibe of Tales from the Crypt. It gave me a vibe of it was Tales of the Crypt, that kind of like style where it's like creepy, but it's fun and it has this like kind of older style. Definitely worth checking out. And we always want to support writers from the community because competitions is another great strategy to get your writing out and get yourself to getting that stuff fully published. So really, really great work. And let's all support her. Beautiful. All right. Wonderful. Happy to help you out, Penelope. Hopefully you can win. I believe the contest ends, I think, next Tuesday. So we're going to try to help send over as many followers as we can your way, my friend. Perfecto and wonderful. Penelope is saying paranormal rom-com with terrifying horror bits. Thanks to everyone who followed me. I appreciate it so much. Absolutely, my friend. Aw, Courtney, bomb.com. You the best. All right. So let's hop into reading number 2. So we're going to be hopping into Altered One, a fantasy murder mystery by LMae. A fantasy murder mystery. Ooh, I was like, I'm like super excited about doing a fantasy murder mystery. This sounds actually pretty fun. So let me queue up LMae's. Perfect. And I have it all set up here. And by the way, if you're enjoying the stream, follow and subscribe. 230 plus days of consecutive writing live streams. This is a writing variety lifestyle channel. This will help you finish getting your published book out. It'll help give you motivation. We do writing sprints. We have a writers group. I invite published authors and writing brands. We do our story critique show, the Blurb and Critique Fest, and we have many more writing variety streams to come. My focus is trying new writing styles, writing formats to help you with each part of the development process. We've done blurbs. Now, whether that's doing editing sessions or whether that's doing development sessions, my goal is to give you as much value with me and other writers from the community. So if you're tapping that follow and subscribe button, you'll be alerted when we go live. Beautiful. And if you're subscribed to the WriteNow YouTube channel, I post all my updates on Mondays on the community tab. So that way you can check out what's going on with the WriteNow brand. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. All right. And with that being said, absolutely love it. All right. So with that being said, let's hop right into Altered One, a fantasy murder mystery. Perfect. All right. So we're going to be hopping in here. Let's see. LMae. And LMae, I believe you were here in the stream as well. I saw you at one point. All right. And I don't think it's going to let me highlight. Actually, I guess maybe what I could do. Okay, hold on a second. LMae, can you give me editor's act highlight it right now? Right now, I only have access as a commentator, and I need either, I think it's editor. It's not, it can be editors or it's like a viewer's access. What is the only thing that'll let me highlight it? Perfecto. Thank you, my friend. All right, so here we go. I'm just going to make sure this is all the same. We'll blow up the text just a little bit so we can see it. Wonderful. And now I can have my highlighter. Oh, no, we don't want to highlight the whole thing. That was not the right move. All right, there we go. Okay, awesome. So, Altered One, the qualities of a weaver. Okay, perfect. Chapter 1, the qualities of a weaver. Inside of a cavernous stone lecture hall, students dressed in dark blue, gold-trimmed cadet uniforms leaned forward in concentration. Their eyes followed a petite woman in her 30s, dressed in an A-line skirt and blouse. Her notable features were her tan bob that flared outwards like a soaring bird's tail, and a beauty mark on her left cheek that punctuated the woman's cheeky smile. Behind her was a battered training dummy, lightly scorched and missing an eye. Farther back and to the right stood a large slate chalkboard, displaying various hand gestures, stances, and at the very top, sprawled in barely legible handwriting, read, Battle Weaving, Application Class, Professor Ranger. Increasing the amount of fingers you use to thread either decreases your chances to miscast. But this only applies to simple sequences and diminishes the punch behind your patterns. The safe choice is to use 2 fingers, the perfect balance of accuracy and power. She outstretched her right hand and generated a beam of light from her fingertips. Rhythmically, her fingers danced, forming interlocking circles. With one flick of her finger and a playful wink, she blasted the mannequin with a stream of water. Her target was knocked from its metal stand and flew backwards into a stone protection wall, creating a deafening clank that echoed throughout the hall. A female student with long wavy lilac standoffish disposition left her post near the doorway and stealthily removed the dummy to replace it with a new one. Professor Ranger clapped her hands together and rested them on the side of her cheek. Who wants to be our sparring pair for extra credit today? A slim, freckled face, brown-haired boy shot up from his seat, waving with an innocent zeal that usually died during the first quarter at the academy. Me, I want to go. A couple of his fellow students rolled their eyes and exchanged irritated glances with one another. His seatmate, a strawberry blonde man, 2 years his senior, turned around and glared at two students who mumbled for his friend to sit back down. So we have Bryson Rottenborn. Who else? Before his copper-haired neighbor could rise from his seat, Professor Ranger called out the name of another student. Alistair Lightwell. A medium-built man with platinum blonde hair solemnly stood at attention. His iridescent eyes shimmered a purple hue from the skylight above the hall. Bryson's seatmate looked concerned. When he noticed, Bryson tensed up and remained standing in place. Meanwhile, Alistair already left his seat. He gave him a friendly pat on the back. You'll do your best. Bryson's anxiety was smacked out of him. Thanks, Tristan. He made his way down the stone stairs, directing his gaze forward and ignoring the scrutinizing stares of his classmates. When Bryson arrived at the arena floor, he positioned himself across from Alistair and observed his opponent. Alistair returned an icy stare that reeked contempt and something else that Bryson could not put his finger on. While balling both of his fists, Bryson furrowed his brow and took a step forward. The professor stood between them, savoring the tension between our two students. Don't forget your dueling etiquette! Take your places. They both took 10 paces back and bowed. Neither of them removed their glare from one another. Professor Ranger raised her finger and with a rapid array of hand movements created a transparent barrier that materialized around the entire ring. Begin! Alistair's pointer finger swiftly drew a square pattern in a speed that was difficult to follow, and in a split second, he formed a shield of light around him. Bryson trailed behind, his fingers trembling from a mixture of nerves and irritation, creating unpolished lines compared to Alistair's clean ones. Professor Ranger observed Bryson struggling. Steady, Rottenburn. Bryson strengthened his resolve, finished the pattern, and sighed with relief when a shield formed around him. Professor Ranger gave him a playful smirk. In contrast, Alistair's annoyance seeped outwards as a grimace. He tilted his nose up, gathered stark shadows underneath his pointy jaw and eyebrows. You almost miscast because of your cumbersome, crude movements. As our professor always says, weaving requires confident, effortless strokes and clean lines. Bryson blew out from his clenched teeth, drew a combination of squares, and shot a dark light at Alistair. Aether arrow! The arrows struck Alistair's shield, causing no visible damage. As a result, Alistair grunted and began to walk forward. Bryson fired a series of arrows and became increasingly frustrated when he saw Alistair did not bother to dodge. Instead, the blonde rolled his eyes. Aether arrow, Aether shield, are those the only patterns you know? Bryson brought all of his fingers together, swished his right arm around, and created a new square pattern. Webs sprouted up Alistair's legs, as well as other parts of the arena, including around Professor Ranger. The woman hopped out of the way. Sloppy form, Rottenborn! You are better than this! Tristan watched from his seat. Hope radiated from his visage. Then he looked over at Alistair and worry crept into his eyes. Alistair's hands were still free, and he appeared apathetic of his current situation. Bryson scratched the side of his temple with his finger, smiling bashfully. Sorry, Professor. He turned his attention to Alistair, whose feet were still trapped in place. Bryson was confident that there was nothing Alistair could do against his next attack. And now for the finisher, Aether Storm! With both of his hands, Bryson created a whirlwind of light that was 6 feet tall and wide and pushed it towards Alistair. His opponent raised his finger and created his own Aether Storm that quickly consumed Bryson's and broke through a shield. Bryson flew backwards, slammed into the barrier, and gave out a shrill cry. His body went limp and plummeted on the stone floor with a thud that made several students recoil. Bryson's ears rang. He could barely make out his professor asking for Magnolia to heal him and Tristan calling his name. Bryson struggled to crane up his neck, and when he succeeded, Bryson caught a glimpse of Alistair looking down on him with overwhelming disappointment. As Alistair passed by the purple-haired girl, he mouthed the words Bryson dreaded hearing from him. Why are you here? Stop dragging down others around you and quit. And that will later that evening, and I think I will end there. that is the story beat. So where we're going to end that beat right there. That was actually a lot of fun. Oh my goodness. LMae, first off, really, really great work. Really, really great work. So I have to say that to me felt like we got like a mix between like we get like this fantasy world, and then I got the urban fantasy, kind of like a Harry Potter wizarding duel almost. So we got this like duel, and then we get all this fantasy magic. That was a lot of fun. This is definitely the type of story that I would read. So I think the things that really stood out to me, I think your magic system is actually very, very intriguing. While I couldn't always picture all of the specific hand movements while doing it as a live reading, your details in explaining the hand movements and the magic overall felt very clear. I think it feels like that the magic system itself is probably the strongest point of this, and I absolutely love that. Also, the setup for the overall world, even though we're really only getting this small like classroom, it's actually very clear. And I think you did a very good job of setting up the scene and the magic. So I think both of those were really well done. And then, of course, the chapter is titled The Qualities of a Weaver, right? So then the goal of this first chapter is really setting up the magic system as it's going to pertain to our protagonist. So I thought that was really, really fun. Really, really great work. I loved that. Yeah, I absolutely love that. Obviously, I'm always a fan of magic. So always being able to learn different types was very fun. And then I think using these different types, like we had like this Aether type magic, and then we had a Vine type magic, and then we have this Professor Ranger. Of all the characters, I actually think Professor Ranger's was the strongest in this scene specifically. And I'm going to tell you why in just a second. But as I look into the elements of it, I would say the world building was the strongest. The plot feels strong, but it's still so early on, it's hard to tell. I loved the way that this scene was structured. I think it was very well done, and it's a very nice like taste of the beginning of this world. This was very fun. So then, because essentially you're pulling readers in with the magic system, and I think that was really cool. The abilities almost made me feel like I was playing, like it was a cross between like a game, almost like one of those like game type magical systems where like you use the ability and they call it out, and then it across with whatever your own world was. So I actually had a lot of fun with that, and I could tell that they were the writers were enjoying it as well. Absolutely. Absolutely. Perfect. So I think one of the things that really stood out to me was kind of, I think the biggest opportunity for this, LMae, is the character development. And let me clarify. So you do actually include a lot of great descriptions for the characters, but because we don't get a real setup for the characters who are involved in this duel, my view as the reader, or my vision in who is who, kind of gets confused because I'm not sure who is who. So let's go through this line by line. You do a good job of setting up the initial room itself, farther back at the school statues. Yep. And stop. So you do a good job. This first paragraph is great for setting up the world. I like that. So the setup for the world is fun. Increasing the amount of fingers you use to thread either decreases your chance. This only applies to simple sequences and diminishes the punch behind your patterns. What I would recommend, because this is the first introduction to any character in here, because this is the professor, I would actually break up this dialogue into 2 bits so we get a little description about the professor in between. Increasing the amount of fingers you use to thread either decreases your chances to miscast. And then I would break up this dialogue here. Increase the amount of fingers you use to thread either decrease your chances to miscast. The Ranger, and I would almost reference her as Ranger because like that's such a unique name. Or maybe you probably want them to refer to her as a professor. Chance to miscast. She said with a point to the board. She said with a point to the board, or just something that clarifies her as the professor. But I think because of that, because we need setup for her character as soon as possible, simply because she's the first character we're introduced to. So I would just do that. That'd be my first recommendation. Now we get here, she outstretched her right finger, but this is fun, right? So we're getting a description of the magic. This is so much fun. Rhythmically, her fingers, she outstretched her right hand and generated a beam of light from her fingertips. Rhythmically, her fingers danced, forming interlocking circles. So she outstretched her right hand. Okay, so she outstretched her right hand and generated a beam of light from her fingertips. So light comes from the fingertips. Rhythmically, her fingers danced, forming interlocking circles. So she's basically doing this, beams of light forming, and then the lights form into a circle. Okay. So that's cool. And I think you actually do some good description for some of these magic concepts, which is great. She outstretched and generated a beam of light from her fingertips. Something that I would recommend for this, LMae, with some of these magical concepts, I would actually break them up into their own sentences, because you're introducing to us to some really cool concepts, and I don't want the back end of your concepts to get lost, because you're introducing a lot to us, right? You're introducing a lot of magical systems, and I want your reader to stay engaged. So in this sentence, we want to focus on, this is her with the beam of light thing. And then each beam of light for rhythmically, her fingers danced, forming interlocking circles. Rhythmically, her fingers danced, forming, you can probably add to that a little bit, but I think I would just do a little less of the more complex sentences, because you're introducing us to some complex topics and ideas. Let's see. Her target was knocked from its metal stand and flew backwards into a stone protection wall, creating a deafening clink that echoed throughout the hall. Perfect. A female student, and then and stealthily removed. So technically, this is about increasing. So this is about the magic. Who wants to be so? And something else is with an idea, I would actually make this a new paragraph, because you have so much going. Oh, why doesn't it want to? It doesn't want to let me tab for some reason. Okay, so pretend that this is a tab. This is being annoying. There we go. Fake tab. So a female student, I would set this up as a new paragraph, because she's basically doing this. And then Professor Ranger clapped her hands together and rested them on the side of her cheek. Who wants to be our sparring pair for extra credit today? Do that. Make sure we use a comma before she speaks. Rest of them on the side of her cheek. Professor Ranger clapped her hands together and rested them on the side of her cheek. Who wants to be our sparring pair for extra credit today? That's great. A slim, freckled-faced, brown-haired boy shot up from his seat, waving with an innocent zeal that usually died during the first quarter at the academy. Waving with an innocent zeal that usually died during the first quarter of the academy. Some freckled-faced boy shot up from his seat, waving with an So with things like this, because so essentially what you're doing is we have this set up for this boy right now, and he's waving with an innocent zeal. I would actually cut the back end of this. I'll just copy this. I'll re-add it. But what I would do is I would cut the back end of that, because when we add that usually died during the first quarter of the academy, I'll highlight that. We'll do here. Perfect. So that usually died during the first quarter at the academy. This is me feeling like it's the narrator trying to tell me an extra piece of information. What I want to do is I want to let the character speak for itself. So a slim, freckled-faced, brown-haired boy shot up from his seat, waving with an innocent zeal. That in itself is great. I think that is enough context for this character right now in this moment. I want to go. And that would make it better, because then essentially you're not giving me too much description in this one moment. Let's see. A couple of his fellow students rolled their eyes and exchanged irritated glances with one another. His seatmate, a strawberry blonde man, 2 years his senior, turned around and glared at two students who mumbled for his friend to sit down. Okay. And then a couple of his fellow students rolled their eyes and exchanged irritated glances with one another. So because I think we're about to introduce the seatmate, what I would actually do, a couple of his fellow students rolled their eyes and exchanged irritated glances with one another. So I would change seatmate, turn around and glare at two students that fumbled. So right now, what's important is this moment right here. So me, I want to go. I would let focus on the students and then move to Bryson Roddenborn. Before his copper-haired neighbor could rise from his seat, Professor Ranger called out the name of another student, Alistair Lightwell. A medium-built man with platinum blonde hair solemnly stood at attention. His seatmate, a strawberry. So I think right now the problem is because there's a lot, we're being introduced to a lot of new characters. I'm just not sure who this character is because we have a strawberry blonde man who is here, and now we have a platinum blonde hair. So I don't actually think this setup here is necessary because since we're being introduced to so many characters, let's see, I'll just highlight this for now. Since we're being introduced to so many characters, we want to focus on a few that we can really follow with in this moment. Right now, who matters? Professor Ranger and the slim, freckled face, brown-haired boy. That's who I would focus on in this moment. Let's see. So we have Bryson Roddenborn. Who else? Before his copper-haired neighbor could rise from the seat, Professor called out the name of another student. I actually love the names, by the way, LMae. You're referencing the names. You're like, it is unfortunate last name. Most of the characters' names are based off their family's profession. Bryson is from a poor family. I actually love their names. Bryson Rottenborn. That's fun. Alistair Lightwell. It gives them this kind of like fantasy naming scheme. I actually think, and before you'd even shared that, I could tell that you have a naming scheme for the characters in your world. And I think that's very well done. I'm very intrigued by it. Let's see. A solemnly stood attention as iridescent eyes shimmered a purple hue from the skylight above the hall. Bryson's seatmate looked concerned. When he noticed Bryson tensed up and remained standing in place. Meanwhile, Alistair left his seat. He gave him a friendly pat on the back. Okay. So this is okay. So I can share now why it's throwing us off. So a medium-built man with blonde hair solemnly stood at attention. His iridescent eyes shimmered a purple hue from the skylight above the hall. That is so cool. That is such a cool moment. Make that its own paragraph because this is going to be the guy that he's running against, that he's about to go up against. A medium-built man with platinum blonde hair solemnly stood at attention. This is obviously Alistair Lightwell. His iridescent eyes shimmered a purple hue from the skylight above the hall. That is cool. That is freaking cool. But when we add this other thing with the seatmate, this gets lost in this whole paragraph. So we want the focus. Now we have a third character we're focusing on. So we have Professor Ranger. We have the freckled face, brown-haired boy. And then we have this new medium-built platinum blonde hair with like the purple looking eyes. So I think I would stand this out. Now, obviously, I think the seatmate, based off what you were saying, I think the seatmate is the protagonist, and I'm pretty sure that's who you referenced earlier. His seatmate, a strawberry blonde man, 2 years his senior. I'm pretty sure the strawberry blonde man is the protagonist based on what you were saying, but that's just a guess. Bryson's seatmate looked concerned. When he noticed Bryson tensed up and remained standing in place. Meanwhile, Alistair already left his seat. He gave him a friendly pat on the back. You'll do your best. So what you've done is you've set up these three characters, a medium-built man with platinum blonde hair. So you've set up Alistair Lightwell. I forgot what the other kid's name was. Okay, cool. Yeah, well, you haven't said it yet. Oh, Bryson. Okay, so you've set up the slim freckled face character as Bryson, and then the platinum blonde guy is Alistair. So Bryson and Alistair. Perfect. And now we have the strawberry blonde friend. Bryson's seatmate. Bryson's seatmate looked concerned when he noticed Bryson tensed up and remained standing. Meanwhile, Alistair already left his seat. He gave him a friendly pat on the back. Bryson's anxiety was smacked out of him. Thanks, Tristan. Okay, so I believe, and this is my guess, I think Tristan is our protagonist. So now that we've set up these three characters, the question that I want to ask LMae, who is the point of view character in this? Are we seeing this story through the platinum blonde haired character? Are we seeing the story through Alistair? Are we seeing the story through Bryson? Or are we seeing the story through Professor Ranger? Because I think that right now is lost because I'm just not sure whose point of view, who am I watching this through? right? And I think clarifying that will determine who should be the next setup, right? Because like you can set up you can set up as many characters as you want, but you just have to make each character setup clear. Once we get into the duel itself, the duel is clear with what's going on with who. The magic stuff is so well done. The attacks are well done. The action is well done. But because we don't have a clear character setup, it gets kind of I get confused about who's who because I'm just not clear on the setup before the duel happens. So if Tristan is the protagonist and if that's who we're watching the scene from, because then you reference the Bryson seatmate looked concerned. This is I'm pretty sure the strawberry blonde guy is Tristan. Then what I would do is now once both of these guys have set up, then I would now set up the Tristan as a character. If the duel is going to be viewed from Tristan, yeah, okay, that's kind of what I had that feeling. So, but I think like it can work, right? So you can set up these other characters, but now once they stand up, now focus on Tristan, right? Set up Tristan's character, right? Introduce him here, set up his character, and then you want to remember that you're watching the duel happening from Tristan's point of view. You want to watch it because then everything that happens, because clearly Tristan cares about his friend, and that's important. Now, another recommendation is have Tristan reference Tristan in the first moment. Because it's so, I mean, technically we're watching this through the professor speaking. Yeah, because technically Tristan isn't mentioned. That's actually not important. Since this is a class, we can still get away with that. But usually for our hero, and this is unless you have a prologue. If you have okay, so this is the story. So this is what I would recommend. I'm kind of going through a couple ideas right now in my head. I think I would set up Tristan earlier on, like initially in the chapter, even if it's just like a reference, even if it's the Professor Ranger points out. Because I think you set up the scene well. I would almost be like here, the platinum blonde man, the platinum blonde, or no, it's not. It's strawberry blonde. I think is Tristan's character. I'll just sit here. Set up Tristan here. That's where I would do this. And when I say set up, I mean just like reference him. It can even be a one-line reference. So that way we know we're watching this through Tristan's point of view. Or you could start with the professor's dialogue and then have her like point to Tristan. Or maybe Tristan asks a question, but you want to do some type of reference that we know we're watching this through Tristan. Because then it makes it clear, like, okay, so Tristan's our the strawberry blonde guy, and then we have these other cool classmates. And then that will make the duel a lot more clear for us because now I know which character is I'm watching it through. Let's see. Bryson seat may look concerned. We notice Bryson tensed up and remains standing in place. Meanwhile, Alistair, I'll have to say it. Yeah, and then with something like this, if you do decide to focus on Tristan LMae, then make sure that at different parts of it, I think you do it a little later, but then make sure like at the beginning part of it is like as they're about to step back, Tristan leaned to the edge of his seat as he watched his friend about to go at it. Or something to that extent, right? So we're continuing to set up that we're watching it through Tristan's eyes, but clearly, like while we're watching it through his POV, we're still concerned because like the freckled kid is like, oh no, I don't want something to happen. Clearly, he's like the underdog character in the scene. And then the other one with the cool name, what's that, Lightbringer or Bryson Lightwell, is like kind of probably more probably a little older and a little bit more experienced. And I think that gives them a nice duality. And then like their dialogue in between the duel works well. Like the dialogue does work really well. I think what a lot of this, and I think for clarity, it's like once you've dealt with the character setups, LMae, I think the scene itself is going to sing like so much. It's going to be so much smoother once we're clear on the setups, because the duel is very fun. The duel is very, very fun. And I think the magic itself is so cool because I want to focus now on like, oh, this cool like magic fight. And then the Aether arrows, the vine magic is cool. Sloppy form, Roddenborn, you're better than this. Because we're introducing so many characters in this first scene, there we have what Tristan, Bryson, and Alistair, and then Professor Ranger, and then we have a full class of students. Just so we don't get confused, I would stick to just using one name for now for the for each of the characters. Sloppy form. But I mean, like this makes sense. Like this is something that a guy would say. Bryson brought all of his fingers together, swish his right arm. I mean, you did introduce them as Bryson Rondermorn, so actually, never mind. That could work. To Alistair, Bryson. And this foreshadowing right here. Why are you here? Stop dragging down others around you and quit. You're like, it's so sad. It's so sad. I was like, clearly his Alistair is our asshole character. Alistair is our Draco Malfoy of the scene. So yeah, other than that, I mean, I think the rest of it could probably just do from some editing, but that's more like second and third draft stuff. So like from where the draft is at right now, like once you fix the character setup, I feel like the scene will be much smoother. And I'm very intrigued because this is a murder. This is a wizard, a fantasy murder mystery. So that means we're probably getting an introduction to the world, the magic, and then something crazy is going to happen. I'm like, ooh, which of these characters are going to die? I hope that Alistair dies. What an asshole. I hope Alistair dies. But clearly he's probably going to live. And he's probably going to be like, it wasn't me. And then he'll pull a whole Draco Malfoy. So realistically, it'll probably be one of these three. Maybe the professor will get killed off, or maybe it'll be one of the students. But yeah, that's all that I got for you, LMae. Once again, I really enjoyed that, and I'm already in love with your magical system. Definitely feel free to resubmit for more excerpts of it, more parts of the story, and I'd love to dig more into the future story and kind of see how it's coming along. Because I love magic systems, fantasy. Y'all know with my last Scarecrow, I'm a huge fantasy nerd. So anytime anybody has fantasy or magic systems, that's a win for me. Anytime there's a Scarecrow or a dragon in the story, that's a double win for me. Awesome. Thanks so much, LMae. That was a cool story. I know. I'm wondering, Trust, the surname Rottenborn needs a great turning like this. I'm almost wondering if Rottenborn's going to be the one who gets killed off. He's being set up as the underdog character. Wonderful. So let's move right along. We're going to be moving on. Sean, I'm going to be queuing up your script next with Summer's Reign. Sean with Summer's Reign. We got our thriller script, and we're almost at the end of it. Wow, we have quite the suspense. So we're going to be reading. I think we might be in the climax, but we are in a very intense moment of the script. So I'm going to be queuing that up in just a second. All right, beautiful. So Sean, and I know I just saw you here in the chat, so I'll be hopping into yours in just a moment. And by the way, if you're looking for an alpha or beta reader, this is kind of what this show's kind of formatted around, kind of like an alpha, like this is kind of like a sneak peek of what an alpha beta reading experience looks like. Now, obviously, because it's a live stream, it's a little bit of a different format, but if you've finished your draft of your story, or let's say you're writing like a long, like 100,000 plus word story and you need feedback on a portion of it, reach out to me. I offer alpha beta reading services. It's generally my cheapest of my services that I offer right now. It's around the $20 to $30 range, but I don't charge it based on an hourly rate. It's going to be more based on the word count and how long it's going to take me to really go through it and then give you feedback. I can go through it faster and just give you verbal feedback, and that makes it cheaper. Or I can go through it, type up notes, and give you more detailed feedback. It costs a little bit more, but it depends on your budget, and it depends on what you're looking for. So if you're needing feedback on your story, and let's say you're like, hey, I'm not ready for a live experience yet, but I really need help with it, message me. Drop me an email or shoot me an email at Kauffman@the-creative-ghost.com. Details are down in the YouTube description as well, but I would love to help you out. Clearly, I love reading stories. And yeah, so definitely reach out if you're needing an alpha beta reader or you're needing critiques on early drafts of your manuscript. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right, so let's moving right along to Summer's Reign, the thriller script. So for those of you who have been joining us previously, you know we have been going through quite the adventure with Miss Summers. All right, so we got Miss Summers and Billy and the kids and all of this craziness going on. So for those of you who've missed out on previous excerpts of this, we've gone through a good portion of this script. Right now, we're in the moment where the serial killer, Miss Summers, is our antagonist, or at least we're led to believe that she's our antagonist. She's an old lady who is shown in the very beginning to have like captured and I think it's like skinning this guy, kind of hard to tell, basically an evil character. She's been set up as this like little old lady who's kind of this evil killer who had a grandson who looks like was killed off previously. We have two protagonists. We have Billy and oh man, I'm blanking on the other character's name, and Nick. So we have the two protagonists, Billy and Nick, and Miss Summers invited both of Billy's kids into her house. There's like this whole like car broken down scene. The kids are basically captured, and Billy did the track my phone, and Miss Summers just killed the neighbor next door who tried to like sneak around, and like craziness is ensuing right now. So crazy, crazy stuff. Okay. So let's hop right into it. So Sean, I got your story all set up. All right. So let me 1 second. All right. Summer's Reign. Interior, Miss Summers' home, kitchen, night. The standoff begins. I think it would be best if you dropped your knife. Sorry, I can't do that, Officer Wallace. Billy slowly lowers his right hand to his waist, feeling for his gun that is not there. He turns flush, realizing he left it in his utility belt, still hanging on back on the couch. Whoops, looks like you forgot to bring a gun to a knife fight. Why did you take my kids? You think this is about your kids? Oh, that's rich. They were so I could get close to you. Worst case scenario, there would have been collateral damage. I swear to God, if you have done anything to, they're fine. At least I think they are. Erica's sleeping off a massive hit of Barbitol. Bradley, I'm not really sure what happened to him. He has to be around here somewhere. You're crazy. Wow, now that's the pot calling the kettle black. Billy stands there listening, trying to figure out where Miss Summers is going with her story. Look, I can help you. Just tell me where my kids are, and I can make a deal to... What do you think I'm doing with you? Yes, let's make a deal. Interior, Miss Summers' home, master bedroom, night. Nick walks across the room and stops in front of the door to where the noise came from. He grabs the doorknob and quickly opens the door. The room is empty, except for a ladder that heads up to the attic. Interior, Miss Summers' home, kitchen, night. Miss Summers and Billy continue their tense conversation. I'm not sure what Nick has told you about me. I hope it was all good. He told me you lost your grandson to gang violence. My grandson isn't lost. He was shot by those thugs, those rejects. He wasn't lost. He was murdered, plain and simple. And every single one of those fuckers need to pay for what they did. I am so sorry. I didn't mean to curse. Sometimes life pushes me just left up crazy. I really had high hopes for Nick. He seemed like his morals were in the right place, not like Garcia. I'm sorry your grandson was shot, Miss Summers, but his case sounds pretty cut and dry to me. I am sorry your grandson I am sorry your grandson was shot, Miss Summers, but his case sounds pretty cut and dry to me. Cut and dry? Such a unique phrase for you to use. You know, I feel we are past the awkward stage of our relationship. Don't you, Billy? Beads of sweat start to form on Billy's forehead. It was not, as you so eloquently put it, cut and dry. You see, while Garcia was investigating my grandson's murder, he was being paid off by the gang. I know, what a shocker. He came over here thinking he could scare me. Scare me? Well, that corrupt ne'er-do-well paid the price for his greed and stupidity. You killed him? Don't act so surprised. We think a lot alike, you and I. The gang member today, that was you. Did you like that? I knew that would get your attention. You're sick. No, just left a crazy. Billy continues to listen to Miss Summers' diatribe. You want to know what's really crazy? I'm one of the good guys. It's not like I wake up and think, who am I going to kill today? Good people don't think that way. I'm sure you're I'm not done talking. Good people do bad things to get their power back. We're pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. Miss Summers rubs her forehead with the back of the hand, holding the knife. They did this to me. They made me do it. I am a good person. I help people. Did you know I was a surgical nurse? Billy shakes his head. I was even a medic in the army. Did Nick tell you that? Billy shakes his head again. Of course not. No one cares. We fought the enemy overseas so criminals could kill innocents over here. It's all about the power. You have to take back your power. That's all I was doing. You believe me, right? Billy nods his head. They all deserved what they got. Do you think they were innocent? The only difference is my victims aren't as innocent as yours. I have no idea what your... And framing the babysitter was a nice touch, I might add. Billy's eyes widen. I'm not stupid, Billy. Or should I call you the Dayton Devil? Oh no, did I just blow your cover? What are you ever going to do? You're certifiable. Where are my kids? Now, we still have some negotiating to do, you and I. The way I see it, we can help each other out. Billy assesses the situation, playing along with Miss Summers' little game. I'm listening. I need you to help me round up these cocksuckers and in the neighborhood. Listen to me and my potty mouth. I don't think I've cursed this much in my life. Ugh, you are such a bad influence on me. Billy watches as Miss Summers swings the knife aimlessly around while talking. How about this? You use your wonderful policing skills to grab the people who killed my grandson, bring them by my place, and we can do what we do. You take the parts you need and leave the carcass for me. It's a win-win. I can't do that, Miss Summers. You know, Nicky is a smart man, so much smarter than you or me. At some point, he's going to figure out, just like I did, but I can be very persuasive when I want to be. And Nicky is so wrapped tight around my little finger, I wouldn't need your help to amputate it. Miss Summers, I am not the Dayton Devil, and there is no way that you will ever gaslight anyone, let alone Nick, that I am. He's already on to you. You don't think we haven't talked? You don't think I haven't already put a tiny little bug in his ear already? Oh, he knows. He knows. But I can change his mind. Like I said, I am very convincing. So, what do you say, partner? Interior Miss Summers' home, attic night. Nick glances into the attic, his gun still leading the way. Unable to adjust to the darkness quickly, he reaches for his flashlight. Turning it on, he slowly scans the room. Boxes, clothes, and random debris can be seen from the focused illumination of the flashlight. As he slowly scans more of the room, a group of 3 figures are propped up in the back corner. Nick focuses on the lifeless bodies, each one in a worsening stage of decay. He notices each with the Skull Brotherhood tattoo in their forearm. In shock, he stares at the motionless bodies when... Don't hurt us. Nick turns to see 2 poised just over his shoulder. He loses his footing and falls off the attic ladder onto the floor, dislocating his shoulder as he hits. Interior Miss Summers' house, kitchen, night. A loud bang grabs the attention of both Miss Summers and Billy. As she is distracted, Billy lunges toward her. She swings the knife wildly towards Billy. He avoids the knife's blade once, twice, the third thrust into his left shoulder, allowing him to get close enough to punch Miss Summers. She falls to the ground, crawling on the kitchen floor, trying to get away. Billy grabs the handle of the knife and pulls it from his body. Blood flows out of the open wound. Billy walks to Miss Summers and stands over her. He lifts her neck back, placing the knife over her throat. Fuck you, Cynthia! As he slices, Miss Summers' body falls limp onto the kitchen floor, blood flowing from the gash in her neck. Her body laying on the floor takes Billy back. Begin flashback. All right. And in flashback. I think what I'm going to do is for time, I'm going to stop here, Sean. So what we'll do is we'll begin on a flashback next time. But begin flashback. Yeah, because I think that's a good beat. Okay. So that was a really, really incredible moment. Oh my goodness, there was a lot that happened. First off, really, really great work, my friend. That uh So I did a lot of highlighting, but I think I need to start by saying that the climactic emotional stakes of this moment were so well done. There was a lot of big reveals in this between Miss Summers' backstory, the Dayton Devil, which is still kind of unclear. It's been teased out, and now we don't know whether it's Miss Summers or maybe Billy probably is the Dayton Devil. And then we have the thriller moment with Nick and the kids, which is really interesting. So we have a lot going on right now, and there's a lot of fun things. I think the overall structure of the scene works very, very well. Really great work. I can visualize the back and forth between the Billy Miss Summers, the Nick going through the attic and falling. Like, this is all perfect thriller horror type vibe for this framework. So really, really well done. I think the overall context that we're getting from Billy and Miss Summers, their overall conversation is great. I'm loving their conversation. I think what really needs to be worked on is just kind of fine tuning some of the bits of dialogue and really edit it down a little bit. I think we also need to have a little bit more action moments to up the to make the Billy Summers conversation up their stakes just a little bit outside of the dialogue. The dialogue itself is obviously very tense. So, all right. So if I'm going through this is what I would work on. The standoff begins. I think it would be best if you dropped your knife. Sorry, I can't do that, Officer Wallace. Billy slowly lowers his right hand to his waist, feeling for his gun that is not there. He turns flash, realizing he left it in his utility. So this was great. Sean, I would just say make sure that if he left his gun there, that you reference it when he left his gun earlier in the script. use him leaving the gun whenever he fled the house or wherever he left it. This is like such a thriller thing of like he's in a rush to go save his kids, and then there's that last shot on his holster in the gun. Make sure to put that. There is a scene. Okay, perfect. If you called out to it, then wonderful. You already did it. Whoops, looks like you forgot to bring, and this is fun. Whoops, looks like you forgot to bring a gun to a knife fight. That is like, that's, yes, good job. That was clever. Really great work. This is like so perfect for Miss Summers' character and the irony of the situation. And this makes sense now. So all of it was set up for her, for the kids. That makes sense. So you think this is about your kids? That's rich. They were so I could get close to you. Worst case scenario, they would have been collateral damage. They were, let's see. Do you think this about your kids? That's rich. They were there. I think this just was missing. They were there so I could get close to you. Worst case scenario, they would have been collateral damage. I would edit this down. Eric is saying, so I think because this is such a tense moment, we want to make their dialogue as like brief and concise as possible because you want the conversation you want it to flow. You really don't want to give one of them a monologue unless you like have to, unless it's like the backstory, which there is a moment where the monologue is necessary. But in terms of this, I would just say cutting down the dialogue, if any. Bradley, oh, he's I'm sure he's around here somewhere. I'm sure he's around here. I'm sure he's around somewhere. Because as the audience, we already know what's happening with the kids, at least for the most part. But this is really for the context of Billy. Um, Eric is sleeping off a massive hit of Barbitol. Mm-hmm. Bradley, I'm sure he's around here somewhere. Yeah, so I would just cut that down a little bit. I feel like this can probably still be cut down a little bit more, but I'd have to think through it. So I'd say if you can find opportunities to cut down the dialogue. Wow, now that's the pot calling the kettle black. Perfect, because she thinks he's the Dayton Devil. Billy stands there listening, trying to figure out where Miss Summers is going. So remember with this, because we're in a script, this is interiority. No interiority in a script. So this is actions only. Billy stands there listening, trying to figure out where Miss Summers is going with her story. It's already clear that he's trying to figure it out. Billy stands there listening. Actually, we already know Billy's standing, so it's not like and this is my recommendation. I would try to come up with more action elements in here. Like Billy takes a step towards Miss Summers, but she raises the knife. Right. So I would find more moments to have some type of action because like we already know he's standing there. So that just becomes extra unnecessary information. Yeah. And Courtney, I actually agree with that. Why would she tell him which drug? I was like, I kind of went back and forth. Like you could have gone the drug, but it's like, we already saw him with the drug and I don't think Barbitol is actually necessary. I would only reference the drug if you're going to have her do something like a witty with the drug itself. So use the drug name if you're going to do something clever. She's using a lot of clever lines, and I think that's actually cute. Something that I like about this scene a lot, Sean, is that she's using a lot of irony in her dialogue as she's speaking to Billy. I almost want more of her irony early in the script, and I don't get as much of her ironic things. I'm getting them now because this is the climax, but like this is fun. I want more of this type of thing. Like she does the pot calling the kettle black. She does gun to a knife fight. She just does a lot of this. I think if you can find opportunities to do more of these types of things that make the moment, she's basically calling out an ironic thing earlier in the script. It'll make her character even more likable early on when you want the that dynamic. Let's see. You're crazy. Well, now that's yep. Billy takes step towards Miss Summer, but she raises the knife. You need to focus. Right now, you see this is a little clearer, right? Because basically now she's using the knife to get him to focus. Look, I can help you. Just tell me where my kids are and I can make a deal. I would actually just cut this part. I don't think this deal part's necessary right now. I think I would actually just cut that. I would cut that there. Go from pot calling the kettle black. Go to the next scene. Because then this is like, it's obviously that she's going to offer him a deal, but we need to get her backstory first. Yeah, I think that makes this moment a little stronger, actually. It punches it up. Miss Summers, now we have Miss Summers and Billy continue their tense conversation. I don't know if this is actually necessary because it's kind of clear. You could actually almost, wow, now that's the pot calling the kettle black. You could actually do something like this. And then maybe include a new action here, right? I think that would be the way to do it. End off on the irony, go to the thrill moment, up the stakes, now go back to a new action. I think that'd be a better setup. Yeah, so I mean, I think that's why it's important to try to give him actions to do, but she's basically holding the knife to his throat, right? And I know you do that shortly as it gets closer, but I think you have to think of what is the progression of different actions that he could try to take, even though she has a knife. He's still going to try to go for her, but she's going to hold the knife, right? Or maybe he's fidgeting. Like whatever you do, I think building that up will definitely help. Okay, so I think with this next section, I'm not sure what Nick has told you about me. I hope it is all good. I would once again cutting down her dialogue. We don't need that as much as possible. I'm not sure what Nick told you. He told me you lost your grandson to gang violence. I think if you can find a way to cut this down, my grandson isn't lost. He was shot by those thugs, those rejects. He was shot. He was shot and murdered. I would say he was shot and murdered by those thugs, by those thugs, those rejects. Every single one of those fuckers need to pay for what they did. I think that's how I would go. My grandson isn't lost. He was shot and murdered by those thugs, those rejects. Every single one of those fuckers need to pay for what they did. I am so sorry. I didn't mean to curse. Sometimes that pushes me. I like to the left of crazy. Once again, another ironic moment, which is clever. I am so sorry. I don't mean to curse. I don't know if her needing to apologize matters or not. It might be important for her character, but I would just her calling out, I don't mean to curse. Sometimes life pushes me just left to crazy. That's clever. I really had high hopes for Nick. He seemed like his morals were in the right place, not like Garcia. Okay, that's a little better. I feel like this could be cleaned up a little bit more, but I think that shortens it. I'm sorry your grandson was shot, Miss Summers. Grandson was shot. Miss Summers isn't necessary. I'm sorry your grandson was shot, but this case sounds pretty cut and dry to me. I would almost have another action here of like Billy's just kind of trying to buy time because he wants to go lunge for her throat, basically. So I would include some type of action, include a Billy action, whether that's fidgeting or something. Let's say I agree with the edits. Would you believe her monologue has been cut down already? Most monologues tend to be. I do this a lot with monologues. We tend to over describe because we want to get a general sense. But then as we refine it, it's always less is more. The perfect example of showing, not telling. I totally get it. Include Billy action, cut and dry. Sorry, you're Yeah, so I think instead of the cut and dry moment, I think what I would do is I would actually have Billy take an action that makes this line come across awkward because he's trying to really he's trying to get the upper hand. And then I would use the action instead of his dialogue as the awkward stage of the relationship. I think that would be stronger. Beads of sweat start to form. That's good because this is a physical thing I can see. Perfect. It was not, as you so eloquently put it, cut and dry. Oh, that's right, because cut and dry was so important. Actually, yeah. Actually, I see why the cut and dry. No, actually, she doesn't need to call it out. He says cut and dry here. It was not so. Yep. So she calls it here. Find. You see, what Garcia was investigating is being paid off by the gang. They just left it crazy. It was like, and I think continue, like, I think even with this conversation, like, as I kind of look at it and I'm realizing this is the trend with this, I think it's more of the same, Sean. I think it's just editing down the conversation for just like extra words that just aren't necessary. I feel like from a gut that the scene can be edited down a little bit, but like from the draft it's at a great rough draft. But for it to get to that next stage, it's just time for editing. That's really what it is more than anything. Because even with that previous part, most of what I'm doing now is more line editing than developmental. And let's just like clarify that the developmental aspect of this is amazing. Like the story makes sense. It's very, very clear. It's more just line editing and cutting down words. The left, no, just left crazy, great, beautiful. Miss Summers considered herself just left to crazy. That is wonderful. I almost wish that she used this line earlier in the script as well, because there's something unique about this phrase, just left of crazy. I feel like she should use this line earlier in the script. And of course, she thinks that she's a good guy. And it's once again with her thing. She's doing just a little more talking, and we should be doing a little bit more showing. Now, there is a lot of exposition here, which makes sense. Like, this is good. When she gets interrupted, that's good. But I think, it's really good. This is kind of like that moment of like the bad guy is like saying all the master plan as the good guy tries to come up with a way to save the day. He shakes his head. I was even a medic in the army. Yep. So we get her backstory. And even like with something like this, of course, not no one cares. When she's talking about power, it's all about the power. This is a moment when Billy should try to do something again, and it should be reference instead of you talking about the power. Billy should try to go for something, and she stabs a knife like right into like the wood, like right before his hand, or something that stops him, right? Because it insinuates and it would help elevate the theme of power. You have to take your power back. Yep. So I would help elevate this idea with an action. And this is her house. So I think there's a way that Billy can probably get himself into a trap because she probably has an idea of how he would respond in this moment. So I think however you get, I have no idea what they all deserve what they got. Do you think they were innocent? I think that with this moment, Billy says playing along. I feel like she should pin him down almost, or pin him to something. Yeah, I think what I would recommend is that he should try to make some type of attempt and she should like handcuff him to something or pin him to something, do something that traps him and makes him trying to like get away. I think that would be a good change of the moment. I think that would actually help, because then it allows her to kind of walk around and diatribe a little bit because she knows that he's kind of stuck. So I think if you can find a way for her to get the upper hand, because right now we also have to keep in mind Billy is what, 40, 50-year-old man. I forgot his age. And she's what, 60, 70 years old. He could easily just overpower her. And if he genuinely thinks that his children are afraid, he's probably going to say, fuck the knife, and just go straight for her regardless and just swat the knife away. And he could overpower her simply based off age alone. So I think that's just something to keep in mind, that she knowing that she could be easily overpowered means that she has to win based on her intellect and premeditation of how she thinks the scene would go down. And this is good. And framing the baby. So, okay. So this goes into Billy's backstory now, which is interesting. So I think what I would do if I was fixing this, I would do the power thing. I would do some type of struggle, have her take the upper hand, and then immediately start on framing the babysitter bit. So you break up her talking about her own backstory, action. Now it's the babysitter, because now not only has Billy lost the physical advantage, now she's digging into him psychologically. I think that's how I would do this. Then we go, the babysitter is great. Then we go the Dayton Devil, and this bit's awesome. You're certifiable. Where are my kids? He already asked where his kids are, so this specific question is just repetitive. He's not going to believe anything she's saying. So unless he's saying something to get her to buy time while he's trying to like break out of something, I would just change that. Yeah, I would just change this line. You're certifiable. Now we know it's like he's saying you're certifiably insane. I think I would just use a different line. No, we still have some negotiating to do, you and I. Yeah, like for some reason I can see this moment of if he's like pinned to the ground or if he's handcuffed to something, he like swipes at her and almost takes the knife, but she's now like, oh, now we have some negotiating to do. Let's see. Billy assesses the situation. I'm listening. And then this is her ploy. Billy watches Miss Summer swing the knife aimlessly around while talking. Yeah. So I mean that once again, it's just editing them down a little bit, but overall, the overall conversation is good. Miss Summers, I'm not the Dayton Devil. Is already on to you. I love this. I love this. So what do you say, partner? That is a great ending for this beat. But yeah, this part of the conversation just needs to edit down their lines a little bit. Don't think I'll put a tiny little bug in his ear. All of what's being said is good. It's just editing. Yeah. So even as I'm like looking over it again, there's like a couple of different line edits I would recommend, but it's hard to, I know I just don't have time to go over the entire thing. But that was an awesome beat. And then I can tell from the conversation, I almost feel like she shouldn't call them fuckers. What about vermins? Yeah, but I mean, I think also because her, like, she starts cussing and that's kind of a thing. He set that up earlier in the script that Miss Summers, like, hates cussing, yet she cusses and then calls herself out for it. So I think that's actually a thing with her character. Yes, but you have to remember that even with the James Bond villain scenes, that even when the villain is diatribing, it's usually when James Bond, it's usually used, that the diatribe is usually used to build tension while James Bond is trying to escape, right? And because there's not enough action, at least in those specific moments, right now it's just feeling like a diatribe and it's not helping to further increase the tension of the action. Right. So if you balance the dialogue and the action better, you can definitely get that same like James Bond villain moment. Absolutely. Yep. That's why it's important, because it's a fast-paced scene. You have to remember that James Bond scenes, those villain scenes, are also really drawn out. The James Bond villain scenes are not designed to be fast-paced and fast at least in those like when Bond is captured and the villains interrogating him, those usually aren't designed to be fast paced. Those are designed to have high tension and draw the tension out, as basically they're usually torturing Bond or whatever's happening. It feels like from the vibe of this scene, because it goes back and forth, that the vibe of this is supposed to be fast paced. Mary, I love that. I don't know. My grandmother could backhand you in the next week at 70. I mean, that's a good call out. So I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that. That could just be my subjective opinion. My only challenge to that is, okay, so your grandmother is 70 years old, absolutely strong, I agree. But Billy is a police officer. That means Billy trains. That means he has to have at least some level of physical endurance in his day-to-day job, right? So maybe like an average Joe Schmo who sits behind a desk all day, like sure, maybe they could be overpowered, but a police officer is probably going to have a little bit more physical vitality. And especially against a 70-year-old, like he would have had some type of training or at least be more prepared for this type of dynamic. That would be my only challenge to that. Okay. And Courtney, that's a good call out, right? So that's coming from a parent's mindset. So, and that's probably why he's holding back then. He isn't sure yet. So he isn't going to chance the one person that knows that they're alive, right? Which makes sense then why he's asking about the kids. And then maybe that is something that I overlooked. Clearly, she has said that they're alive. As a parent, he isn't going unless he thinks the kids are lost. He isn't sure yet, so he isn't going to chance of one person that knows that they're alive and where they are. So he knows that they're alive, clearly. Yeah. So I mean, like, she has said that they're alive. She said that they're fine, but clearly he doesn't trust her. Asking again seems like a deflection of the call out. That's a good point. Yeah, so clearly, Sean, another really good point to keep in mind. Let's see. And then we go back to allowed grab. Yeah, so I mean, this is good. The thing with Nick and the kids is good, and the Skull Brotherhood is fun. That's all good. I'm actually pretty good with that because this is all like action thriller moment. I think that's fine. And then we have the fight between them right up to the flashback. So I had a feeling that we were going to have something like this, because this was coming up. I think you need to find a halfway point, a middle action, um, in between like the conversation, because there's a lot of conversation. I think that's going to be the only way to break their conversation up while still making it feel fast paced. So it almost makes me think, but by the time they get to this point, and I always like the rule of threes, Sean. I love the rule of threes. So I would almost consider like having two previous attempts from Billy trying to get at her. Clearly, he made a step the first time, and maybe she thrust her knife, and then him making a second attempt, and something happens before he gets to this moment. But that would be my recommendation if I was trying to find moments to add action. Wow. A loud bang grabs the attention. Wow. Okay, so he killed her. He slices Miss Summer's body falls limp onto the kitchen floor, blood flowing from the gash in her neck. Her body laying on the floor takes Billy back. Yeah, wow, so she dies. Well, I mean, at least it's insinuated that she's dying. Interesting, which leads us to the belief that Billy is actually the antagonist. Very well done if that's the case. Wow, really, really great work. I that's awesome. Especially now that she's led the breadcrumbs that he's the Dayton Devil, which means that it's going to end up being him versus Nick. That's interesting. That's really interesting, especially because Billy's been set up to be the happy-go-lucky good guy with the tragic backstory of the whole script. That's really fun. And now we're probably about to get the backstory of what actually happened with the killing of the wife or the babysitter scene. So that's awesome. Ooh, oh man, Sean, thank you so much for submitting. That was an awesome read. That was an awesome, awesome excerpt. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, and that could be part of the tension as well, right? You could have her increasing the tension by her referencing the kids, but not actually saying what happened to them. But here's the thing, though. What she wants in that moment is she wants to partner with him because she needs him to get the rest of the gang members. So she does, from a psychology, she has to lay breadcrumbs to try to lure him in, which is why she's saying that the kids are fine. Yeah, it almost has a foreshadowing to that he may actually. Yeah, I agree, and I think that's very well done. Yeah, Sean, really great work. Really, really great work, my friend. That was an absolutely fun script excerpt. I really enjoyed that. That was super fun. Thanks so much for submitting that. And you absolutely did the rule of threes, even with even in her death scene or that knife slash. You're like, you literally say that he slashes her 3 times. So like you clearly already know it well. I could too, actually. I mean, you could actually probably get away with this as a low budget movie. Actually, I think if you're going to pitch this to a producer, you could pitch this as a low budget because I mean, there's not really many special effects. You can do generally horror stuff, thriller stuff really, really cheaply. And based off the scenes so far, the special or the budget would probably go into the blood and gore or the actors. That because there's not very that many locations. You could do all the locations cheaply. I think if it were me, I would probably put the money into better quality actors because you'd really need the acting to stand out for this to rise above the stereotypical horror movie or the stereotypical thriller type thing, depending on who you pitched it to and who was willing to pick it up. So, but yeah, I would say low to mid budget. Absolutely. Great call out, Toaster. If he kills her, she has to say the kids are fine. Not necessarily. I mean, because think about it right now in the scene, earlier on, she did say that the kids are fine. So clearly, like right the way it is currently, he thinks that the kids, he believes her enough to think that the kids are somewhere and not dead for him then to try to kill her. That's what's happening right now. Um, yeah. And Shauna, like, I think you can go back. You can go either way on this, right? You could either draw it out and have her not say where the kids are at and use that as tension, or you can keep it, say where the kids are at, and then have that be another moment. Right now, it's led to believe that he kills her in that scene. That's led, but maybe she's not dead. He says her body goes limp. Usually, it usually means they're dead, but not necessarily. Uh, it, it's right now it's debatable. It could go either way. So, oh yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I don't think taking out completely. I think just adjusting how to go about it is more that than anything else, Courtney. But that's a really good call out. Really, really great call out, especially because I'm not a parent. So like that, you guys definitely have great insight into how a parent would more likely believe in that type of situation. So I think that's absolutely incredible. I was going to say low budget, but I didn't want to seem like I was just, there's absolutely nothing wrong with low budget films. Horror movies generally, Horror movies are notorious for being low budget because they can be put together on a cheaper budget. Low budget doesn't mean bad quality. Low budget just means you have less resources to put together the story you want. Now, notoriously, a lot of films that end up getting made that are low budget are not great because they don't have the resources to do the things that they really want to do, or they don't have the right actors, or the script isn't where it should be, or it's just not an effective story. But really good call out. Thanks for sharing that, Toaster. And I mean, I think it also depends on like what the vibe of a Lifetime movie is. Well, I've never seen Lifetime movies. I know Lifetime movies are notorious for having a very, I don't know if generic is it, but it's just Lifetime movies have kind of like a vibe. It's like a Lifetime movie. It's like its own niche. Whether or not you think they're great or bad is besides the point. Lifetime movies are its own vibe of movies. And I think when we think about pitching movies, and especially with scripts, we want to think about, where do I see this script being made? Do I see this as being a thriller horror movie on Netflix? Or is this something I want to produce myself and put it on my own website? Or is this something that I want to pitch and try to get option through one of the major studios? There's a number of different ways you can go about it, and it really just depends on where you feel that the audience is most likely to engage with it, and then you have to be able to convince that to a producer. Courtney, this is great. Lifetime is too cheesy for this masterpiece, says a romance writer. I absolutely agree. I think this would be great for Blumhouse. The only thing is Blumhouse goes a little bit more in the horror vibe. And this script right now, this script is definitely a thriller. I mean, I guess, I mean, this script is predominantly a thriller. I'm thinking about how much this goes toward as a horror. I mean, there's definitely elements of it, especially with the beginning opening, especially with this climax. I think for it to work for Blumhouse, you'd have to add a little bit more horror elements. You'd have to add a little bit more gore to the middle sections of the script for this to be a good Blumhouse option. But I mean, I can tell from the twist at the end, this twist is really cool. The twist I can tell is very clever. And I didn't expect. I'm like, oh no, Billy's the bad guy. Like, who would have thought? I was like, dang, I didn't see that one coming. I thought Miss Summers, I was so focused on the Miss Summers being the little old lady that I wasn't thinking like, oh, okay, Billy is the bad guy. I was like, well, shit. But that just goes to show, really well done. Really well done plotting. Absolutely. Mm. Oh, all right. Awesome. Sean, thank you so much for sharing that. That was a lot of fun to dig into. And we're all looking forward into see how the script continues to evolve at the end. So thanks again for submitting, my friend. Really enjoyed that. And clearly the other writers in the community did as well. Oh yeah, this is something that I would I would probably watch this regardless of what platform it was on, but this could totally work as a Netflix one. It could work out as a Blumhouse one. I think because it's a thriller and right now it's kind of borderlining the horror vibe, there's a couple different options. And it really just depends on what direction Sean would want to take it in. Aw, you the best. Great, great work, my friend. All right, so let's move right along. Let's see. How am I feeling right now? Okay, so I think I'm feeling good. I am feeling good. All right, so which one do we have next? We have. Hmm. Okay. All right. So next one we have up on deck, I'm gonna do Mike's story. So Shadows of the Dreamwalker is another excerpt from the fantasy story from Mike Edwards. All right, perfect. So Mike, I think I saw you earlier. Let me know if you're here in the stream, my friend. We got Shadows of the Dreamwalker. Perfect. And if you're enjoying the stream, follow and subscribe. The Right Now community has daily writing motivation to help you finish publishing and get through the process of that first book, those early books, so that way you can eventually make a living and earn some revenue off your writing. We got all the motivation between writing sprints, story critiques, published author, guest authors, and all the things in the community. So smash that like button and you'll be alerted when we go live. And if you're on YouTube, make sure the bell notification is checked so that way you'll be alerted to every live stream. Beautiful. Much, much appreciated, my friends. All right. And we're going to hop into Shadows of the Dreamwalker. So we actually previously did an excerpt. We did a previous excerpt of Shadows of the Dreamwalker. Let's see. I think I want to say that we did a previous reading of it, the first chapter earlier on. I think this was a couple weeks ago. But it was good. It was a good start to this kind of like shadow world, this like dream walking. I love dream walking, and I think that's always a win for me. I always think dream walking is very intriguing. Okay, so let's see. I have the screen all queued up here. Let me hydrate. Okay. So we got Shadows of the Dreamwalker. Now, if I remember from last time, yeah, I remember this. I remember we did the first part. We did the setup for the character last time, and I remember it was like this romance between the protagonist and the love interest. Yeah, and at least his love interest. I think it kind of sounds like she's dead, but we didn't get far enough. But yeah, this is definitely the type of like fantasy story that I would read. So let's see what we got. Perfect. Bear with me 1 second. I see an Amazon package being delivered, so I don't get distracted. All right, wonderful. I just had to make sure that we would not be interrupted. Okay, so Shadows of the Dreamwalker by Mike Edwards. Anor handed the beautiful redwood box to her husband. Happy anniversary, my love. Shocked at such a gift, he unlocked the gold clasp and opened the box. The dagger shone inside and sat on a cushion of black velvet. The inscription on the inside lid was written in Elvish script and translated to Dawnbreaker. An arcane blade? He questioned. It can harness arcane energy. Your energy, if you let it. Look. She took hold of the balewood handle and closed her eyes. The magic she possessed flowed through her eyes. Oh, okay. The magic she possessed flowed through her veins and began to seep into the balewood handle, as if the wood itself was drawing her power. The majestic energy then moved up the blade, and each rune began to glow a hue of purple. But I cannot use arcane magic, and if anyone finds out about your power, you know what they will do, he warned her. Don't worry about me, and you can use the power. You just have to believe in yourself. You've done it before. Anor had total confidence in him that he could harness that raw, uncontrollable energy, but he understood the consequences, understood that if he were to be caught, he would be exiled to the Forgotten Lands, a place where almost nobody survived. She was right, though. He had used this magic before, but that was a time almost forgotten. Andil was ripped from his reverie as a thunderous noise became deafening. Looking around, he saw many dark figures encircling him. They appeared to be black horses with glowing demon red eyes, which stood out ominously in the curling blanket of white and gray. He could not distinguish their riders as they sat atop their mounts. On edge and ready to defend himself, he screamed towards them. "Who are you?" But he was met with silence. He gripped his dagger tightly in his right hand, and the flow of amethyst-colored energy began seeping into the polished wooden handle. Each rune, in turn, began to radiate a soft glow, and Andil could feel the pulsating magic within himself. The feeling was alien, and it scared him. One rider dismounted and stepped forward. As they came into view, the figure was dressed in dark, metallic armor. The helm alone was something from a nightmare, with spikes jutting out at obscure angles. A light hue of red emanated from the face, where eyes should have been, and Andil was entranced at this mighty specimen that now stood before him. The creature stood like a man, but there was something different, something alien, ancient, and ethereal that Andil had never seen. The creature's armor moved like smoke and swirls around its body. As it moved, it appeared to be mimicking Andil's form. He felt his heart rate rising, his muscle tensing, and mentally he was prepared to fight this creature of unknown origin. Andil raised the dagger and struck as quickly as a serpent, a precise strike that would have seen the blade sink into the throat of the creature. Almost, but you need to try and predict where I am moving. Confused, Andil looked around. The monastery courtyard was vast, and he could see all the young children of the Alar training in their hand-to-hand combat. He looked up and saw his opponent, his old master, Ervil Malurgar. "Forgive me, my master. Forgive me, master," he said. "I am distracted." His voice was that of a child, young and high-pitched. Master Malorgar let out a chuckle and smiled. His perfect white teeth stood in dark contrast against his dark weather-beaten skin. He wore a simple robe of brown cotton, tied at the waist with nothing more than a simple piece of robe. To his left hung a small brown leather pouch, which housed the salves for blisters, cuts, and bruises for the rigorous training. Around his neck, a golden-colored amulet, denoting the rank of master. In the center of the large circular trinket were 3 small emeralds, a rectangle on which sat a circle and a triangle, the mark of the healer, denoting his position. Unlike the other monks at the monastery, his bald pate did not have any tattoos, nor did he feel the need to ever get any. He knew his abilities and was confident in besting anyone both of skill and knowledge. He moved around gracefully for one of his 98 years, but he barely looked to be in his 60s. Leaning on his wooden staff, he looked at the young boy in his eyes. "A girl, is it?" he asked. "Well," Andel began. He was interrupted by his master, who began laughing in fits of hysterics. Others turned and began to look. Through breaths of laughter, the old monk said, "You think we don't know?" Before another round of chuckling took hold, he composed himself. "Oh, young one, you forget. I too was once your age. So, her name?" "Aenor," he answered. "Pretty. Walk with me a moment." The old monk turned and began to make his way to a wooden bench, situated in the shade of a balewood tree. It was tall, reaching over 40 feet in height, and its canopy stretched out, covering a small portion of the courtyard in shade. As they reached the bench, the old monk groaned and sat. "Now then, that's better. So, is she from a village?" He looked sheepish towards his master. "Well," he began. "Oh, spit it out, boy. I'm not getting any younger. And don't worry, I will not tell the abbot about your nightly adventures." He was now level with the boy, Andil, and looked into his gray-colored eyes. However, on closer inspection, some may say that his eyes were a pale lavender. "She works in the tavern, the Dancing Fox. A little older than me, but..." He trailed off again, and the monk finished for him. "You haven't talked to her yet? Well, not to worry, in time you will. Now, what about her arcane power?" He was taken back by the question and looked at his former master. "Excuse me?" he questioned back. "Her arcane power. Just how powerful is she? And what would you do to have her back?" Confusion now began to run through his mind, and a flicker of his master turned from peaceful old healer to a monstrous black dread. The young Angile began to move back slowly. His master's voice became gruff and low. It said, Well, Endile, what would you do to have Eleanor back? Fear gripped him. His voice began to quiver as he asked, What are you? He looked around for the others, about to raise the alarm, but the place was deserted. Bricks were crumbling around the outer wall. The sun once was hot and beating was now replaced with a bitter chill. Gray clouds began to block out the light, and Master Mullergore was now walking towards him. As he approached, the illusion of his former master vanished, leaving behind the black dread of this creature stalking upon him. And Dial continued to back away. He looked down and felt the strange sensation that he was back, where he initially was, surrounded by mist. This creature of blackness and his horsemen. Using his training, he quickly examined the creature, looking for some sort of weapon, a sword, a dagger, anything. But then it dawned on him. The creature itself was a weapon. The armor with all its spikes of metal could easily impale a man with ease. And Dial, realizing he was still gripping the dagger, struck again. With a swift movement, the creature moved backward as the dagger sailed past him midair. Seeing that he had missed again, he continued to strike, lower this time, aiming for what appeared to be the legs of the creature. The dagger hit the armored plating surrounding the leg and skirted off to the side, sending sparks into the void. He tried for a third strike to the left of the creature, but with a move that Endile didn't even see, the creature had grabbed a hold of his arm. He began to struggle against the grip of the creature and could not break free. Pressure was applied to Endile's arm, causing his fingers to spray open, the blade falling to the ground. Thanks to his training, Endile grabbed the blade with his left and made a final attempt to strike at the unknown figure. Realizing what he was about to do, the creature disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Laughter reverberated. Laughter reverberated around him, and he was suddenly back in the bleak grasslands. And Dial looked around, seeing nothing but darkness, death, and decay. The plants were lifeless of color, and he could feel his own life beginning to drain from himself. The creature finally spoke. Calm yourself, Undial. You need not be afraid. Who are you? He questioned. A friend, but not one that you can comprehend. Hence why I took the form of your old master, for comfort more than anything, replied the creature. Show yourself, he demanded. The creature reformed, its swirling dark armor taking on the ominous figure that had previously presented itself. Its glowing red eyes stared at Endile, and he felt the need to strike again, but knew that the creature would anticipate his moves. You wish to strike me down? The creature asked. I wish to know who you are. What have you done with Aenor? Why, I have done nothing. She told you this is but a dream. And like most dreams, anything can happen. Your beloved Aenor is no longer of this dream, and I am here instead. Don't talk in riddles. Tell me what you want. Want? Why, I am not sure at this time. Maybe I need you, maybe I don't. Fate has yet to decide your path. Fate? Yes, fate. You may know her as Nithaya in your tongue, the goddess of the future. If only your pathetic humans knew the truth about your so-called gods. Do you not pray to her when you need something that has not yet arisen? Enough of this. Bring Aenor back. I've already told you, Endile, this is a dream and I cannot do what you ask. Endile's patience grew thin, and the dagger was gripped tighter in his hand. Through gritted teeth, he asked again, Who are you? The creature remained silent, studying Endile, contemplating its next words. Endile's patience ran out, and he swung his blade again, but within an instant, the figure grabbed his arm again. The grip caused Endile to crowd in pain and attempted the same tactic as before, but the movements of the creature were too quick, and it grabbed the blade before Endile could take control. The blade, now filled with arcane energy from Endile's anger, began to seep into the creature. Endile could see the power being drained and could feel his own life energy being taken from him. The creature took in a deep breath as the final remnants of the blade's arcane power were absorbed. That's better. The loud, thunderous sound of the thud came again. But it seems we do not have much time. I guess that fate is decided. I am Dreamwalker, and I am here to help you, Endile, to help you find Aenor. You are in my world of the dream, but I can help you if you will accept it. The creature that called himself Dreamwalker finally loosened his grip, and Dial could feel his strength returning. Confused by this Dreamwalker, he asked, "What is this place? Where's Anor and who are you?" Dreamwalker pondered the question before answering. "You could call me a friend, and as I have already said, you are in a dream. I am a wanderer of these worlds, and I have been looking for someone of your strength for some time. But sadly, I do not have time to explain. I will be with you again." The thud came again, and a faint voice could be heard, but Undial could not make out what it was saying. "Wait, just wait a moment!" But Dreamwalker had already mounted his warhorse and began to move away. The voice came from all around. "Seek out Zarkov." Dreamwalker said, "For now you must wake." And Dial began looking all around him and saw something more at the corner of his eye. He turned, and another black figure in similarly spiked armor stood before him. And Dial froze at the sudden appearance. The figure stood with its hand raised, palm open before Dial. An eye appeared in the center of the palm as the mysterious creature spoke. "Wake!" End reading. Awesome. Really, really cool moment. I absolutely love the world of it. Really, awesome. Really, really great film. I have to say, I think the thing I absolutely love about this is the world. I love dreamwalking and I love the idea of it. And you have these cool like creatures, you have this cool dreamwalker character. I feel like what's actually working the strongest for this story right now is the world building and the character development. I really, really like what you have going for Dreamwalker. And then I like this, like, you refer to it as almost like I don't know, I'm getting like bug shape, but this kind of like alienish, like spiky looking armor, which is cool. Yeah, there's definitely some fun things you have going on. I think that the descriptions are a lot of fun. I can tell that there's this is very plot focused because you're really getting him to like, okay, so this is like maybe the mentor character. Now he has to go and find whoever the next character is. What was that? Zarkov. Zarkov. So I can tell that you got a lot of cool things going on here. And once again, I think the world building is a lot of fun. And clearly our main character, let's see, our main character, Endile, is clearly trying to figure out, like, he needs Anor. He wants to find Anor, and it's all tied to this knife, which is a lot of cool. So really good work on that part. As I get into the portion itself, I think that actually the biggest thing that's holding it back right now is the structure. So I think there's some structural opportunities, and then dialogue a little bit. I think the dialogue is more that we need a little bit more action to break up some of the dialogue moments. So as I'm getting into this, because I know we started, what was that? We started here. So with where we were at, the dagger shown inside on a cushion of black velvet. That was cool. I want to call out the dagger. The call out to the dagger is really cool. One of the biggest structural notes, dialogue. Whenever a new character speaks, you got to have a new paragraph. That's just like a standard. That's a standard. Otherwise, the reader gets lost if two characters say the same thing in a paragraph. And I think there were a couple times here where I think you had them both speaking, even though it was the same subject. Regardless, new speaker, new paragraph. You can still have the same speaker in different paragraphs. Like, let's say they have a monologue if the subject is different, but new speaker, always new paragraph, so you don't lose your reader. But the dagger bit is cool. I was like, okay, we got this cool shiny black dagger on this like black velvet cushion in this box, which is fun. And it's written in Elvish. That's really cool. And I remember that Elvish is part of the world, which is a lot of fun. Dawnbreaker and Arcane Blade. I don't think there's any reason to italicize this. Let's see. I think this is all in the dream, I believe. It was an expensive gift. Yeah, I was like, I don't think there's a reason that you need to italicize all of the dialogue. So there's no reason to italicize dialogue. You would basically use italics if you're trying to make something stand out. Or let's say maybe that your character is having a conversation in your mind, they're not physically saying, then maybe that's when you would italicize dialogue, right? So if a character's not speaking, and let's say he's like he's thinking his thoughts to a nameless voice, okay, that's when I would italicize dialogue. But it sounds like that they're verbally saying it, even if they're in a dream world, whether or not they're in a dream, whatever reality they're in, if it's physically coming out of their mouth, then it's a quotation and you don't need italics. Yeah, that's just, I think that's standard. Okay. And then it can harness energy, your energy if you let it. Look, she took hold of the balewood handle. That's cool. The balewood handle. I would change this balewood handle here so you don't use the same word or the same description twice so close to each other. I always like to try to change up the different like word choices because as readers, something that creates an engaging reading experience is using a distinct vocabulary. When we start seeing the same words or the same descriptions back to back, it can sometimes make readers lose interest unless you're using it with intention. The blade and each rune begin to glow. But this is a cool effect right here. The majestic energy then moved up the blade and each rune began to glow a hue of purple. Like I can totally picture this. This is such a great description. You're opening this box with this balewood, this black dagger. It's on this velvet cushion. And then you have the Anor is like, she's got this like energy flowing through her body. She picks up the handle and then it's like this purple hue as these like runes light up. Really great description. It's fun. Yeah, and then I had broken it up while we were reading it, but yeah, this was just the dialogue needed to be broken up. Tone of confidence. She was right though. He had used this magic before, but that was at time almost forgotten. And then we're cutting to another moment. Ando was ripped from his as the thunderous noise became deafening, and I think this is when he's pulled into the dream world. Okay. So I think what's interesting is I can't tell, and this is probably because we also started in the middle of the excerpt as well. But I think especially because you're using a dream world, you just have to clarify, are we in the present moment? Is this the present moment in like reality? Or is this like a dream world right now? And however you want to, yeah, however you want to go about it is the way. Window. That's a good call out. That's a really good call out. I think that just would be a word choice change. Nice recognizing it. Yeah, and I mean I think one what's really important to call out is that like as a rough draft, a lot of these things work very well, right? So with things like that, like these would things we'd start looking at for later drafts to really like cutting down so we can really like make sure that the ideas are as concise as possible. Yeah, and it's like even as I think about like here, like this one long paragraph here, like this needs to be broken up. And this is why I'm saying structure, I think, is one of the biggest opportunities right now. This long, like let's just put this into 12-point font. Let's say that this was the normal font for a book. Even this long paragraph, this is like almost a page 12-point font. That's too much. You never want to have a single paragraph. Otherwise, like part of a reading experience is we need some white space. Now, of course, if you're far into the story and like it's important, that's one thing. But because we're still so early on in the story, you just don't want a chance losing your readers. So I would say make sure that you're cutting this up. And I would say that probably something like this can probably be edited down a little bit. And it was ripped from his reverie. But and the thing is, like, there's some really cool things that are happening here. These are really cool things. We got these like strange writers that are coming. right? So it's like something like this, you could easily break that up, and then you could cut down, you could edit down some of these moments as they came into view, and Dale could feel the pulsating magic within himself. The feeling was alien and it scared him. Perfect, right? So you see how I want to break up each of these moments with, since they're new ideas. When Ryder dismounted, as they came into view, the figure was dressed in a dark metallic armor. The helm alone was something from a nightmare, with spikes jutting out at obscure angles. This is so cool. This is so cool right here. That's why, like, a moment like this, like, you have to let it stand out. You have to let it breathe by itself. One rider dismounted and stepped forward. As they came into view, the figure was dressed in metallic armor. The helm alone was something from a nightmare, with spikes jutting out at obscure angles. A light hue of red emanated from the face where I should have been. And I would almost say that, like, make that paragraph, that sentence its own, because this is such a cool description. And Dial was entranced at this mighty specimen that now stood before him. So that's almost like its own, like, I would kind of end that paragraph there, because that makes this paragraph so much stronger if it's its own paragraph. So much stronger now. But before, when it was part of that longer one, it was easy to get lost. But now I know as a reader, okay, I can have a little bit more focus, because this focuses on the armor, and then it ends with Undial was entranced at this mighty specimen. Woo, man, like that's so much better from a structure perspective. And then now we talk about the creature moving towards him. Undial raises the dagger and struck as quickly as a serpent. A precise strike that would have seen the blade sink in the. Undial raised the dagger and struck as quickly as a serpent. A precise strike that would have seen the blade sink into the throat of the creature. So I think the only thing with this is, did the strike sink into the creature, or is this a metaphor that you're using? And Dial raised the dagger and struck the serpent, and struck as quickly as a serpent. I would end it there, because I think that's just a better tie off and a lead into this next part. Let's see, almost, but you need to try and predict where I'm moving. Confused, and looked around. The monastery courtyard was vast. Okay, so now we're going to either like a flashback or a dream sequence, which is cool with the master. And this was all good. Almost, I think this was all fun. He looked up and saw his opponent. Yep, he said, "I'm distracted." This stuff's all good. Once again, we have a little bit more of another run on paragraph, so just probably edit this down a little bit. But what's happening here in this scene is fine. This is all like kind of some backstory for him. And we're getting a little bit more of his probably backstory with him and Anor, which is fun. And I think the master's disposition is fun. I think this is actually kind of interesting. Something to be aware of, or something just to keep in mind, is who's point of view who is the point of view character in this? If the point of view character is Undial, then how are we looking into Undial's gray colored eyes? However, in closer inspection, some may say that his eyes were pale lavender, right? So I would cut that out if Undial is the POV character, because like Undial can't be looking at himself. Unless part of this dream sequence is Undial's like looking overhead and watching his own backstory, then you could do that. But you just want to be aware of that. Otherwise, then this feels like it's the narrator is trying to tell the reader, and it could chance point the reader out of the story. But the rest of this backstory is good. This is all fun. This moment when the scene changes is so much fun. I love this moment. This was absolutely incredible. Once it changes, and then we know like the backstory, the world's like falling apart, the bricks, it's ash, it's this chill. This is really well done. This moment was awesome. The only thing that I would challenge with this idea was the creature itself is a weapon. What makes him believe that the creature's armor is a weapon? Is it because the creature's armor is spiky? Like, how does that is it because the creature's not holding a weapon? Like the creature is just like nothing in their hand, and it's basically it's just their armor. I would say just clarify it, make that a little clearer, or use a different thing than considering him the weapon. The motion is good. This is all good. You begin to struggle. Yeah, and once again, this is just another run-on paragraph. Make sure you split it up, realizing what he's about to do. And then the conversation between the creature and Dial is really fun. And you actually do it pretty well earlier on with action, but I would just incorporate just a little bit more action between Undial and the Dreamwalker character during their conversation, like you did in the earlier sections. Actually, I would probably cut down their conversation a little bit. It almost feels like he starts getting a little repetitive, like he's asking the same thing twice over. So I would say just when you're thinking through the conversation, ask yourself, like, what is the point that Endile is trying to get across? And especially because this is early on in the story, like make this brief so that way we can build up tension and know very little about the Dreamwalker character. It builds up hype and then suspense. So that'd be my recommendation. But yeah, overall, that's all that I got for you, my friend. I'm very intrigued by this Dreamwalker aspect, and I definitely want to know more. Thanks again for submitting that. That was awesome. Thank you again. Yeah, I'm totally going to be thinking about dreamwalking now, and I want to have a dreamwalking character in my own story. That was cool. I love dreamwalking. That concept. One of my favorite like dream uses of dream walking was probably in the Wheel of Time series. Was absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, Courtney, that's a good call out with them being repetitive. I think that's a really good call out. All right, beautiful. Shadows of the Walker, check. Now as we're kind of hitting this point in the stream, I think my voice is done. I think I'm going to have to wrap up the submissions for the day. I think I almost lost my voice in the last critique. I can feel it. I was like, clearly it's a combination of the voices and the critiques. So that's what I have for today's submissions. And yeah, but if you want updates on what's going on with the WriteNow community, make sure to subscribe to the Art of Writing, the newsletter. So what I'm doing is I'm using the newsletter as a combination for updates to the WriteNow community and getting newsletter editions of the Art of Writing. Subscribe to it and you'll receive weekly updates. I'm going to start trying to incorporate some more like easier email updates with just easier strategies so I can do it more consistently for you. But if you're needing more like consistent like writing motivation, it includes writing tips, writing strategies, it includes our schedule for what we have planned for the WriteNow community and other miscellaneous things. So if that would be beneficial to you, definitely subscribe to the Art of Writing newsletter. And it's down in the YouTube description. I'll also drop it down here in the comments if you want to go check it out. So definitely worth subscribing to. Awesome. And then as we look towards creative writing on the morrow, if you submitted a story and we didn't get to it today, no worries. I got you covered. It will be added and resubmitted to the next story and critique show. And I will keep you updated on our next critique show episode. We had some absolutely great stories. We had some great submissions today. I had a lot of fun. And if you're looking for something to read or watch next, down in the YouTube description is the Reading Sprints for Storytellers playlist. There were some absolutely great episodes, great stories from our previous episodes. So go check it out. Cool playlist. It's highlights from the other story and critique episodes. So today's was episode 26. Out of the 25 episodes, we got some great stories on there. So definitely worth binging. Awesome. And then make sure to come back tomorrow. Tomorrow is the Create Right Now podcast, where I'm going to be sitting down and chatting with Worthy Chaos Comics. And we're going to be talking about the strategy and the development process for how she created the Worthy Chaos comics, the universe, and how she not just developed it, but also how they're crowdfunding it. And they're crowdfunding it successfully. So we're going to be diving into the creative and the financial, the physical aspect of it. So make sure you stay tuned, whether you're working on a comic series or you're kind of interested in the crowdfunding. I know I am, so I'm definitely looking forward to learning more. I'll be sitting down with Carissa from the Worthy Chaos comics. Awesome. And that'll be at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't forget, tap that like button on your way out. Help us show that writing streams are cool. All right. And that brings us to the end of the stream. Thank you all for being like so part of the conversation. LMae, you were awesome. Courtney, you were talking a lot. You great. You had some absolutely invaluable insight. There was a lot of you. Mass Toaster, you were awesome. Sean, thank you for chiming in. There was a lot of you guys who were giving like some really great feedback. Mary, you got some absolutely incredible feedback. Yeah, and those are just like a couple of the call outs that stood out. But yeah, I just want to say like thank you for being involved in the conversation. I promise you that every single writer whose story we got to today values your feedback. And if we didn't get to your story, we'll get to it in future episodes. Totally no worries. It's all a process. And yeah, I got you. So I'll email you details for the next episode. And that brings us to the end of the stream. Oh, I'm glad you guys enjoyed. I had a lot of fun with you guys as I'm like dying and losing my voice over here. I'm like, I can barely talk, but I always enjoy doing our Saturday streams. Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I do daily live streaming. So definitely make sure you're following. You'll be alerted when I go live. That's the same way. Like whenever I listen to like writers, artists, influencers, I always throw them on the background as I'm working other things. I'm glad you enjoyed, my friend. Thanks for finding us. It's always cool with the Twitch community. Well, Twitch I know is generally a little more focused towards gaming, obviously. We get some really cool artists over on Twitch. So glad you could find us. I know, Mary. That's some, yep. I'm actually gonna go make myself some tea after this because I can feel it. I need to be better about probably drinking tea for the Saturday streams with like tea and honey. I used to a lot during when I was acting, but I've been lazy with water, and energy drinks are not a good combo for the Saturdays. Clearly, my voice is feels the pain. All right. Well, it's been a lot of fun. And that brings us to the end of the stream. Don't forget, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kauffman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers.